There is a 9-year-old boy at a chili festival watching another boy eat from a bowl he made himself. The other boy finishes, says the chili is pretty good. The boy who made it agrees, then explains what was in it. That episode has a 9.6 on IMDb, highest rated South Park episode ever made, and it is not close to the darkest thing this show has done. South Park has been running since 1997. In that time, it has killed the same child hundreds of times, written a Christmas special containing a blood orgy and the birth of the Antichrist in 4 days, and aired a school shooting episode where the math class just kept going. Most people think they know how dark this show gets. They think the darkness is about shock value, going somewhere no other show will go just to prove it can. That reading is wrong. These episodes are dark because they are honest. Every detail in this video is real, verified, and canonical. Nothing has been exaggerated because the show never needed exaggeration. The parents were in the chili. The car had a little boy in it when it went into the river. The classroom kept teaching while the shooting happened outside the door. Welcome to East Park, the greatest revenge in cartoon history. There is a moment in season 5 of South Park where a 9-year-old boy watches another boy eat a bowl of chili, and the entire audience watching at home holds its breath. Not because the chili looks bad, because of what is in it. Scott Tenorman Must Die aired on July 11th, 2001. It has a 9.6 on IMDb. That makes it not just the highest-rated South Park episode ever made, but one of the highest-rated individual television episodes on that entire platform, sitting alongside series finales and once-in-a-generation moments from shows that took themselves very seriously. South Park got there with a chili cook-off and a $10 debt. The episode starts small, the way the best revenge stories always do. Cartman has been conned. A 9th grader named Scott Tenorman told him that buying pubic hair would cause him to hit puberty faster, and Cartman paid $10 for it. When his friends explain that pubic hair has to be grown, not purchased, Cartman realizes he has been humiliated and robbed in a single transaction. He goes back to Scott to demand a refund. Scott says no. Then Scott takes an extra $6.12 from him. Then Scott tricks him into traveling all the way to Fort Collins for a fake pubic hair fair that does not exist. Then Scott films Cartman doing a humiliating pig dance in exchange for a promise of getting his money back, burns the money anyway, and shows the video to the entire town. Kenny McCormick literally laughs himself to death watching it. Everything up to this point is set up. The episode has been playing a trick on you. Every failed revenge attempt Cartman makes looks like the show building to a joke about how he keeps losing. What the episode is actually doing is something much more careful and much more cold. It is showing you a person learning that he cannot win through normal means and deciding to stop using normal means entirely. The plan Cartman executes in the final act of the episode was not improvised. It was designed months in advance. It accounts for every person who might get in the way, including his own friends. Here is what he actually did. He found out that Scott Tenorman's favorite band was Radiohead. He wrote a letter to Radiohead pretending to be a South Park community member, telling them that a local boy named Scott Tenorman was dying of cancer, and his final wish was to meet the band. He asked if they were free next Tuesday around 5. Then, and this is the part that makes the whole thing horrifying, he told Stan and Kyle about his plan to get a pony to bite off Scott's body parts, knowing that Stan and Kyle would immediately go warn Scott. He wanted them to warn Scott, because while Scott was preparing for the fake pony attack, he would not be watching what Cartman was actually doing. What Cartman was actually doing was arranging for Scott's parents to be on a nearby farm after tipping off the farmer that trespassers would be there. The farmer shoots trespassers. Scott's parents are shot and killed on that farm. Cartman gets their bodies. He grinds them into chili. At the ChiliCon Carnival, a public event Cartman organized specifically for this moment, Scott serves Cartman a bowl of chili that he believes contains pubic hair. Cartman acts impressed. He switches the bowls while Scott is not paying attention. Scott eats Cartman's chili. He comments that it tastes surprisingly good. Cartman agrees. The moment Scott finishes the bowl, Cartman tells him what was in it. Scott does not believe him at first. Then Radiohead walks out, not to perform, to tell Scott personally that they heard he was a crybaby who cries all the time and that they hate crybabies. Then Cartman confirms what the chili contained, and Scott's parents are not in the audience like they were supposed to be, and Scott starts to understand. He falls apart on the spot. He cries. He gets sick. He is broken completely in front of the entire town. Cartman leans in and licks the tears off Scott's face. His final line is, "I made you eat your parents." The episode ends. fans. Trey Parker and Matt Stone said directly in interviews that this episode was made with one goal: to prove that Eric Cartman was the most evil kid in the world. Not the funniest, not the most outrageous, the most evil. They debated for a long time whether it was acceptable to have a child character orchestrate the murder of two adults. They eventually decided it was acceptable on one condition. Cartman could not pull the trigger himself. He could arrange everything. He could manipulate every person involved. But the actual killing had to happen through someone else. The farmer had to be the one to shoot. Cartman just had to make sure the farmer would. That distinction matters more than it might seem. Parker and Stone were not trying to make Cartman a murderer exactly. They were trying to make him something more disturbing than a murderer. They were trying to make him a person who understands systems well enough to use them against people. The farmer was a system. Stan and Kyle's predictable loyalty to Scott was a system. Radiohead's compassion for a dying fan was a system. Cartman ran every single one of them exactly the way he needed to. Rolling Stone named this moment Cartman feeding Scott his parents, the second greatest South Park moment in the show's history. They described the episode as the perfect high-low combination of the show's ability to be both shocking and brilliant at the same time. That is correct, but it undersells the craft involved. The episode is not shocking and brilliant at the same time. It is shocking because it is brilliant. The reason the reveal lands so hard is not the content. It is the realization that Cartman was running this plan from the beginning of the episode, and you were watching it happen, and you did not see it coming. Most revenge stories let the audience see the plan being assembled. The audience knows the hero is setting a trap, and they watch the villain walk into it. Scott Tenorman Must Die inverts this completely. The audience thinks they are watching Cartman fail over and over. The audience has been tricked alongside Scott. And so when the final reveal comes, you are experiencing something close to what Scott is experiencing. A dawning, sickening understanding that the person in front of you has been 10 steps ahead the entire time. That is why the episode has a 9.6. Not because it is funny, though it has genuinely funny moments. Because it is constructed. Because every single thing in it was placed there on purpose and pays off in the same final scene. Because a children's cartoon produced a revenge story more tightly built than most professional thrillers. Parker and Stone also noted something else in their commentary. They had never before focused an entire episode on a single storyline. South Park up to this point had always run 2 or 3 subplots side by side. Scott Tenorman Must Die is the episode that taught them a single-focused story could hit harder than anything they had done before. It changed how they wrote the show going forward. There is one more thing about this episode that almost nobody talks about, because it did not exist when the episode aired. 9 seasons later, in Season 14, Scott Tenorman returns. He has spent years researching his own revenge on Cartman. And in the process of doing that research, he discovered something. Jack Tenorman, his father, the man Cartman had murdered and ground into chili, had been having an affair with Cartman's mother, Leon Cartman. Eric Cartman is Jack Tenorman's son. This means that at the ChiliCon Carnival in Season 5, Cartman fed his half-brother his own biological father and licked his tears. The tears Cartman called yummy and unfathomable were technically his own. The murder he was so proud of was the murder of a man who was, by blood, his family. Scott tells Cartman this in front of an audience and waits for it to destroy him. Cartman processes it for a few seconds. Then he points out that since his father was a Denver Broncos player, this means he has a connection to the Denver Broncos. He decides this is fine and moves on. The show does not let Cartman be destroyed by the revelation, because letting Cartman be destroyed would be too easy. It would suggest that somewhere inside him there is something that can be reached. The joke, if you can call it that, is that there is not, or that if there is, it is buried under enough layers of self-preservation and calculation that nothing from the outside can get to it. Scott Tenorman Must Die introduced Cartman as the show's true villain. Not the cartoonish kind of villain who does bad things because the plot needs someone bad. The kind that operates from a completely self-contained moral universe, where the only thing that matters is whether Cartman wins or loses. Every terrible thing he did in the following 15 seasons, and there are many, flows directly from the character this episode built. The show knew what it had created. That is why they made the episode the way they made it. They were not testing a limit. They were setting one, underscore, underscore, quote, underscore, zero, underscore, underscore. What happens next on this list is a death. Not a comedic one, not a quick one, not a Kenny one where the credits roll and everyone forgets about it. A death that took several people behind the camera completely by surprise, that was built out of real anger at a real situation, and that turned out, years later, to be one of the most genuinely sad things the show ever did, for reasons nobody understood when it aired. Section 2. The death they built out of anger. Isaac Hayes voiced Chef for 9 seasons. Every single episode for 9 years, his name was in the credits, even the ones where Chef did not appear. Parker and Stone put it there on purpose, a small acknowledgement that this person mattered to the show, and the show knew it. Then in March 2006, South Park aired the Season 10 premiere. It was called The Return of Chef. By the end of the episode, Chef had been struck by lightning, set on fire, dropped down a cliff while hitting every rock on the way down, impaled through the torso on a jagged tree stump, shot 3 times by accident, had his face torn off by a mountain lion, had his arm and leg ripped from his body by a grizzly bear, been split in half at the waist with his organs hanging out, and then, as final confirmation that he was actually dead, his ruined corpse violently defecated. Cartman had said moments before that the last thing a person does before they die is soil themselves. He was trying to offer hope. Then, the body answered. The show had killed characters before. Kenny died practically every week, but those deaths lasted 30 seconds and everyone forgot about them by the next episode. This was different. This was 9 minutes of detailed, escalating, increasingly specific destruction of a character the audience had genuinely loved for nearly a decade. There was no joke. There was no reset. When it was over, Chef was dead. To understand why Parker and Stone did this, you have to go back 1 season. In November 2005, South Park aired an episode called Trapped in the Closet. It was about Scientology. It laid out the actual beliefs of the Church of Scientology in detailed animation, beliefs the church considers sacred and does not publicize widely, and treated them as comedy. The episode featured Tom Cruise literally hiding in a closet and refusing to come out, which became one of the most shared images from the show's entire run. The episode ended with a direct challenge to the church to sue Parker and Stone personally, with both of their names listed in the credits as John Smith and Jane Smith. Isaac Hayes was a Scientologist. He had been one since the mid-1990s. In early 2006, Hayes left South Park. The official explanation given at the time was that he objected to South Park's religious intolerance, and specifically to Trapped in the Closet. He said the show had a long history of being offensive, and he had accepted that, but mocking religious beliefs crossed a line he could not accept. Parker and Stone responded immediately and without much charity. They pointed out that Hayes had never objected to South Park mocking Christianity, Islam, Judaism, or any other religion during the 9 years he worked there. The objection only appeared when the show targeted his specific religion. They viewed this as rank hypocrisy, and they were not quiet about saying so. The return of Chef was their answer. In the episode, Chef returns to South Park after spending time with an organization called the Super Adventure Club. The boys notice immediately that he is acting strangely, saying disturbing things to children, propositioning them, behaving in ways that are completely unlike the person they knew. They investigate the Super Adventure Club and discover it is a cult that brainwashes its members into believing that molesting children grants immortality. The show ran the text on screen. This is what the Super Adventure Club actually believes. This was a direct callback to the text card from Trapped in the Closet, which had read, "This is what Scientologists actually believe." The parallel was not subtle. The Super Adventure Club was Scientology. Chef being brainwashed was Hayes being Scientology. The boys desperately trying to reach their friend and pull him back from a cult was Parker and Stone's version of what they believed had happened, that their friend and colleague had been captured by an organization and was no longer fully himself. They rescue Chef from the Super Adventure Club's headquarters. He seems to come back to himself. He apologizes. He starts to walk back toward the boys across a rope bridge. Then the club's leader calls out to him from the other side. He reminds Chef why he joined in the first place. He tells him his life will be grand and eternal if he stays. Chef stops. He turns back toward the club. The boys beg him not to. He keeps walking. A bolt of lightning strikes the bridge. The bridge collapses. Chef catches fire while still hanging from the burning rope. He tries to climb back up, but cannot hold on. He falls. He hits multiple rocks. He lands on a jagged tree stump that goes through his torso. He is pinned there. A mountain lion appears and begins tearing at his arm. A Super Adventure Club member raises a rifle and tries to shoot the mountain lion to protect Chef. He misses the mountain lion. He hits Chef. He fires again. He hits Chef again. He fires a third time. He hits Chef a third time. A grizzly bear appears. The bear and the mountain lion fight briefly over Chef's body. They reach a compromise. The bear takes his leg. The lion tears off his face and his arm. The body splits in half. The internal organs are visible. Cartman says, maybe he is still okay. They say the last thing you do when you die is crap your pants. The corpse answers. Kyle gives the eulogy. He says, we should not be mad at Chef for leaving us. We should be mad at that fruity little club for scrambling his brains. This was South Park's real statement, delivered through a 10-year-old boy at a cartoon funeral. They were not angry at Hayes. They were angry at what they believed had gotten to him first. The Super Adventure Club then secretly recovers Chef's body and resurrects him as Darth Chef, a direct parody of the ending of Star Wars Episode 3, where Darth Vader is rebuilt from what remains of Anakin Skywalker. Chef gets black armor. His chef's hat becomes the helmet. His weapon is a glowing red spatula instead of a lightsaber. His new voice is provided by the actor who voiced Darth Maul in the Star Wars prequels. Darth Chef never appeared in the show again. One thing is worth noting about how Chef speaks throughout the entire episode. Every single line of dialogue was assembled from audio clips taken from previous episodes. Hayes had not recorded any new material. Parker and Stone took 9 seasons of recordings and edited them together to create new sentences. Some of the cuts are obvious if you listen carefully. Some are not. The effect is of a person who sounds almost right, but not quite, which, whether intentionally or not, is an accurate description of someone who has been brainwashed. Isaac Hayes died in August 2008, 2 years after the episode aired. He had suffered another stroke. He was 65. The story did not end there. In July 2025, Isaac Hayes III, the son, posted a statement explaining what had actually happened in early 2006. His father had suffered a major stroke just months after Trapped in the Closet aired. The stroke severely affected his speech and his memory. While Hayes was incapacitated and unable to speak for himself, the Church of Scientology resigned from South Park on his behalf. They used his name to make the departure official. Hayes himself, according to his son, never made that decision. He could not. He was not well enough to make any decision. His son pointed to a January 2006 interview Hayes had given to the AV Club before the stroke, in which Hayes spoke about South Park with affection and expressed mild, calm disagreement about the Scientology episode without any suggestion he was planning to leave. A journalist who had spent time with Hayes in November 2005, a month before the resignation, reported watching Hayes perform his South Park song, Chocolate Salty Balls, at a concert in Memphis and get the entire audience singing along. This was not the behavior of a man who hated the show he had worked on for 9 years. What this means, in simple terms, is the following. A man had a stroke. While he could not speak or make decisions for himself, an organization he trusted signed his name to a resignation letter and ended his career. Then the show he had spent 9 years working on, believing he had chosen to leave and had done so out of hypocritical loyalty to that same organization, destroyed his character on screen in the most brutal way the writers could devise. Parker and Stone were punishing a man who had not actually done what they believed he had done. They were furious at someone who was, at the time of their fury, lying in a hospital bed, unable to speak. This is not information that existed when the episode aired. In 2006, based on what was publicly known, the episode read as two people defending their work against someone they felt had betrayed them. That reading is not entirely wrong. They genuinely believed Hayes had left by choice, and genuinely believed that choice was hypocritical. Their anger was real, and their argument was coherent. But it was aimed at the wrong person. Kyle's eulogy, "We should be mad at the fruity little club for scrambling his brains," landed differently in 2006 than it does now. In 2006, it was a joke about cults and a swipe at Scientology. Now it is accidentally the most accurate description of what actually happened. The club did scramble his brains, not metaphorically, literally. It took advantage of a man whose brain had been damaged by a stroke and used his name to end a 9-year professional relationship he had not chosen to end. The Return of Chef is one of the few South Park episodes that gets more disturbing the more you know about it. Most of the show's dark moments are dark in the way they intend to be dark, deliberately, controlled, aimed at a specific target. This one stumbled into a different kind of darkness entirely. It is a monument to real anger producing real cruelty, and a reminder that the people making South Park were not always operating from a position of knowledge. They were operating from a position of certainty. There is a difference between those two things. The show understood this when it was analyzing other people. It understood it less clearly when the subject was themselves. Chef's spatula is still in the opening credits. After his death, the show placed a spatula in his coffin because they could not recover his body. That spatula has appeared in the background of South Park episodes ever since. It is a small thing, but in a show that throws almost everything away, they kept that. ___1___, the next episode on this list also involves a parent trying to destroy someone they were supposed to protect. But where Chef's death happened because of institutional fury playing out on screen, this one is quieter and somehow worse. A mother, a car, a river, and a small boy chatting happily about his day while the current carries him further from shore. Section 3. The happiest kid at the bottom of a river. Jingle Bell Rock plays on the car radio. That detail is in the episode, not mentioned casually. It is there on purpose, playing softly while Linda Stott shifts the gear to neutral, steps out of the car, tells her son to stay put and not unbuckle his seatbelt, and walks away from the riverbank. The car begins to roll. The music keeps playing. Butters Stotch, sitting in the front seat, does not know what is happening. He trusts his mother completely. She said to stay put. He stays put. The car enters the water. The current takes it. Butters watches the world drift past the window and figures his mom must be worried sick about where he is and that he needs to get home soon because the family has a dinner reservation at Bennigan's. This is Butters' very own episode. It aired on December 12th, 2001 as the Season 5 finale. It has a 9.0 on IMDb. It is framed as a parody of cheerful 1950s family sitcoms, complete with a theme song about what a wonderful kid Butters is, and a wholesome visual style that looks like something that should be teaching children about sharing and being kind to neighbors. What it is actually about is a mother trying to drown her child, a father covering it up, and a small boy walking home alone in the dark, singing to himself, completely unaware that his own parents believed him dead and were relieved about it. The episode begins with Butters excited about his parents' anniversary dinner. The restaurant is Bennigan's. Butters talks about Bennigan's the way other people talk about places they love more than almost anywhere, with specific detail and genuine anticipation. He is going to get the ranch hand baby back ribs. He has been thinking about this. His mother, Linda, has a problem. Every year her husband buys her a better anniversary present than she buys him, and this year she wants to get ahead of it. So she asks Butters to follow his father around town secretly and find out what he is planning to buy her. Butters is delighted by this. He has been made an honorary inspector by a policeman at some point, and he takes the role seriously. Inspector Butters gets all the facts. He follows his father, Chris, to a movie theater, then to what he describes as a gym. He takes photographs. He comes home and reports to his mother in the proud, detailed way of a child who has done exactly what he was asked. He shows her the pictures. The pictures show Chris entering a theater that screens films for gay men. The film showing that night is called Fisting Firemen 9. Then Chris goes to the White Swallow Spa, which is a gay bathhouse. One of the photographs Butters took shows another man having sex with his father from behind. Butters cannot read what any of the signs say. He does not understand what any of the places are. He describes his father going to see a movie and then going wrestling at the gym. He notes that one black man had his father pinned down for 15 minutes straight. He cannot figure out why his father told his mother he was going shopping when really he was going to the movies and wrestling. His mother looks at the photographs and faints. Butters jokes that she must have had a nice trip and that she will see him next fall. He laughs at his own pun. His mother is unconscious on the floor. What follows is Linda Stotch having a complete mental collapse. She paints the entire house 3 times. She keeps painting. The camera shows her on a ladder in a daze, painting over rooms she already painted, muttering that everything must be clean and everything must be new. Chris watches this and does not know what to do. The next night, Butters follows his father again, because his mother still does not know what present Chris is getting her, and this time finds his father at the bathhouse again, where he walks in on Chris engaged in a private act. Chris tells Butters to go home. Butters cheerfully says goodbye. When Butters gets home, Chris sits him down and explains that sometimes it is okay to tell a small lie to protect someone's feelings. He asks Butters not to tell his mother what he saw, because if she found out, it would make her become very upset. Butters says that will not be a problem. He already told her everything the night before. Chris goes completely still. Linda comes into the room shortly after and says in a flat, quiet voice that she would like to take Butters for a little car ride. She asks if Dad is coming. She says no. Daddy needs to stay home and think about what has happened. Butters gets up and follows her out the door, looking forward to the car ride. The episode is careful about what it shows and what it does not show. We do not see Linda's face while she drives. We hear the radio. We hear Butters talking to his mother about things that happened at school. Then the car stops. Linda gets out. She tells Butters to stay in the car and not unbuckle his seatbelt, and that she will be back shortly. She says this softly. Then she shifts the gear to neutral and steps away from the car. The episode then reveals what Linda had decided in small clinical sentences. She had intended to kill herself after finding out about Chris. She decided she could not leave Butters to grow up without a mother. She could not leave him to be raised by Chris alone. So she decided to kill him too, by letting the car roll into the river with him inside and then kill herself. Her reasoning, the episode explains, was that this was the kindest option she had available. The car does not sink. The current carries it downstream for what Butters estimates is all the way to Denver. He watches the scenery go by. When the car finally beaches on some rocks, he calmly unbuckles his seatbelt, because now the car has stopped, which means it is safe to do so, and gets out. He finds a phone and calls home. His only thought is that he is going to be late for Bennigan's. Meanwhile, Chris has come home to find Linda writing a suicide note. She stops when she sees him and immediately goes to hang herself on a noose she prepared. He stops her. He breaks down and admits that his behavior came from chatting with other men on the internet and that he still loves her and does not want to lose his family. Linda confesses that she drowned Butters. Chris promises he will not let her go to jail. They agree to cover it up. The cover story they construct is that their car was stolen by a carjacker who took Butters with it. They need a description of the carjacker. They settle on some Puerto Rican guy. This accusation goes out to the press. South Park becomes a media event. The story attracts the attention of a specific group of people, Gary Condit, who at the time was under suspicion regarding the disappearance of Chandra Levy, O.J. Simpson, and John and Patsy Ramsey, who were still publicly suspected in the murder of their daughter, JonBenet. All of them have also claimed that their loved ones were taken by a Puerto Rican man. They welcome the Stotches into their group with a chant from an old 1932 film. The episode treats this satirical detail completely straight, as if it is simply the normal support network for parents whose children have been stolen by Puerto Rican carjackers. Butters arrives home in the middle of his parents arguing. He walks in on them mid-fight and surprises them because they believed he was dead. They see him and are horrified and overjoyed at the same time. Then they tell him to say that a Puerto Rican man dropped him off. Butters refuses. He gives a speech about lying. He is a child who has spent this entire episode being cheerful and obedient and trusting completely in the adults around him. And now he stands in front of his parents and tells them that lying is wrong and they should not be trying to teach him to lie. He says this with genuine moral force. His parents, moved by their son's integrity, call a press conference. At the press conference, they reveal everything. Chris admits to his activities at the bathhouse. Linda admits to trying to drown Butters. All of this is broadcast publicly. Butters stands nearby and learns in real time, along with the rest of the television audience, that his mother tried to kill him. The episode does not cut away from this. Butters hears it stated plainly, on television, in front of reporters. He attempts to make a small joke about it. Then he explains to Stan, Kyle, and Cartman that he knows he is probably going to be scarred by this for the rest of his life, and that the other kids at school will probably make fun of him for it, and that he now realizes that sometimes lying really can be the better option. Stan asks if he is going to be okay. Butters says he is going to be okay. Then he says, "No, I am lying." He walks back to his family. He reappears a moment later and sings his theme song. The episode ends. This is the episode that introduced Butters as the show's fourth main character after Kenny's permanent death, one episode earlier. Parker and Stone said in the DVD commentary that they wanted to give Butters his own episode as a way of introducing him to the audience before he took a larger role in the show. They needed the audience to understand who Butters was, so they showed his mother trying to drown him. The specific cruelty of Butters' very own episode is not in any single moment. It is in the gap between what the episode looks like and what it is. The theme song at the beginning describes a boy with a heart full of magic and eyes full of wonder. The animation is soft and warm. The structure is built to feel like a children's program. All of that presentation is being used to deliver the story of a 9-year-old boy sitting in a sinking car while Jingle Bell Rock plays, completely trusting that everything is fine because his mother told him to stay put. Butters trusts his parents the way children trust parents in television programs about families that love each other. The show uses that trust as the weapon. Every time Butters does exactly what he is told, follows his father, stays in the car, does not unbuckle, comes home in time for dinner. The episode gets darker. His obedience is the mechanism of the danger he is in. If he had been less trusting, less cheerful, less purely and completely a good kid, he would have been harder to almost kill. The show never punishes the Stotch parents in any real way. They do not go to jail. They give a press conference, and then the family goes to Bennigan's. This is another deliberate choice. The episode is not interested in justice. It is interested in something more uncomfortable. The fact that families contain enormous darkness, and that children living inside those families often cannot see it, and that the protection children expect from parents is sometimes exactly where the danger is coming from. Butters will be almost killed by his parents again in a later episode called Margarine. That time they actually bury an empty coffin. That time they attempt to summon his spirit back from the dead when he comes home. The show returns to this well because it has not finished with what it is saying. What it is saying is that Butters Stotch survives his parents the same way he survives everything, by not fully understanding what is being done to him, and by finding his way back to the dinner reservation regardless. __quote, _2, __. The next episode on this list involves a death that actually made the audience cry. Not a death played for horror, not a death built from real anger, but a death the show had been treating as a throwaway joke for 5 seasons. And then suddenly, in one episode, did not. Section 4. The Christmas special that should not exist every year. Television does the same thing with Christmas. Someone learns a lesson. A family comes together. Snow falls at the right moment. The music swells. Something that was broken gets fixed in time for the holidays, and everyone is reminded that the things that matter most cannot be bought in a store. This is the template. It has existed for decades, and it works because audiences want it to work. They come to Christmas specials expecting warmth, and the specials deliver warmth, and everyone goes to bed satisfied. Woodland Critter Christmas aired on December 15th, 2004. It is Season 8, Episode 14, the season finale. It has a 9.1 on IMDb. It opens with soft, cheerful music, a rhyming narrator who sounds like the audiobook version of a classic holiday story, and a shot of snow-covered trees in a peaceful forest. A boy in a red poofy hat walks through the woods. The narrator describes him as the boy in the red poof ball hat, which is Stan Marsh, and begins telling the story in the same bouncing rhyme style as How the Grinch Stole Christmas. The whole thing sounds exactly like a holiday special that parents would put on for young children while making hot chocolate. Trey Parker wrote this episode in 4 days, not because he had the idea ready and just needed time to execute it, because the production schedule required a season finale by Wednesday, and it was already Saturday morning, and nobody had any idea what the episode was going to be. Parker said the only thing anyone had was a loose description, Woodland Critter Christmas, and that for an entire day on Friday the writers could not figure out what that meant or where it was going. Then on Saturday afternoon the idea clicked. Parker has said that the specific moment it clicked was when someone said the words "blood orgy" out loud. That was the piece that made the rest of the episode make sense. Stan discovers a group of 12 woodland creatures decorating a Christmas tree. In the forest, there is Squirrely the squirrel, Rabbity the rabbit, Beery the bear, Porcupiney the porcupine, and 8 others. They are small and round-eyed, and they speak in high, cheerful voices, and they are immediately lovable in the specific way that animated woodland creatures in holiday specials are always lovable. They need Stan's help. One of their number, Porcupiney, is pregnant. An immaculate conception, the narrator explains, meaning the pregnancy occurred without a father, and they are preparing for the birth of their savior. They need a star for their Christmas tree and a manger for the birth. Stan helps them. He is a good person. He builds the star and attaches it to the tree and goes home. That night, the creatures wake him up in his bedroom. There is a problem. A mountain lion has been coming to their part of the forest and eating the pregnant animals before they can give birth. They need Stan to kill the mountain lion so that Porcupine's pregnancy can continue safely. Stan is reluctant. He does not want to kill a mountain lion. But the narrator keeps pushing the story forward, and the creatures keep asking, and eventually, Stan goes to the mountain where the lion lives. He kills the mountain lion. He feels good about this for approximately 15 seconds. Then, he looks into the cave and finds 3 small cubs. The mountain lion he killed was a mother. Her 3 babies are now alone. Stan has orphaned them. He carries the cubs back down the mountain to tell the woodland critters what happened. He expects sympathy. He does not get sympathy. He gets something else entirely. The critters do not care about the cubs. They are celebrating. Their savior can now be born without the mountain lion stopping the birth. They are thrilled. They are jumping up and down, and their eyes have changed. They are glowing red. The critters tell Stan that their savior is the Antichrist. They sacrifice Rabbity the rabbit on the spot. They disembowel him and eat his flesh. Then they have a blood orgy. The camera does not cut away from this. It stays on the scene long enough for the audience to understand exactly what they are watching. 12 cheerful woodland creatures with glowing red eyes, celebrating the coming birth of the devil's child in the blood of their rabbit friend, while the Christmas music continues playing in the background. Parker confirmed in interviews that this specific scene was directly inspired by a moment in the 1997 horror film Event Horizon. In that film, a crew discovers a lost spaceship and finds tapes of what happened to the previous crew, footage of the crew members killing each other, eating each other, and having a violent, bloody orgy. It is one of the most disturbing sequences in mainstream Hollywood horror. Parker and Matt Stone had apparently found it funny, or at least found the idea of recreating it with cartoon woodland animals funny, and that is where the blood orgy in a Christmas special came from. Stan tries to stop what is happening. The critters use their satanic powers on him: fire, darkness, demonic forces that he cannot fight. He escapes but cannot prevent the birth. He needs a way to stop the Antichrist from being born, and the only thing that can stop it, the narrator tells him, is a mountain lion. The 3 cubs are the only mountain lions available. But the cubs do not know how to kill a baby. They need to learn how to perform an abortion. Stan does not want to take 3 small lion cubs to an abortion clinic. The narrator makes him do it anyway. The narrator has been doing this throughout the episode. Stan will try to stop, and the narrator will say something like, "But Stan knew he had to go back." And Stan will argue with the narrator directly, and the narrator will keep moving the story forward regardless of what Stan wants. This argument between a character and the story being told about him runs throughout the episode and is one of its stranger structural choices. The narrator has authority over Stan that Stan cannot override, which is part of the episode's larger point about how stories work and who controls them. The abortion clinic montage is set to cheerful music. The doctor is happy to teach the cubs everything they need to know. The patients at the clinic find the cubs adorable. Everyone has a wonderful time. Stan and the cubs return to the forest and find out they are too late. The Antichrist has already been born, a small, hairless, jabbering creature. The critters have Kyle Broflovsky tied to a satanic altar. They chose Kyle because he is Jewish and not baptized, which makes him the right kind of vessel for the Antichrist to enter. Kyle is horrified. Then Santa Claus arrives. Santa Claus pulls out a shotgun and shoots the woodland critters one by one. He is efficient and calm about this. He does not hesitate. The critters scatter and scream, and Santa works through them methodically. A few of them try to use their satanic powers on him. The powers do not work on Santa. He keeps shooting. Stan explains that the Antichrist will die without a human host. Kyle has been freed from the altar and is standing nearby. Kyle announces that he has decided to allow the Antichrist to enter him. Nobody is sure why he does this. The episode does not explain it. But Kyle absorbs the Antichrist and immediately begins feeling the evil spreading through him. He begs the others to get it out before it fully takes control. Santa believes it is too late and raises the shotgun toward Kyle. Stan stops him. The 3 mountain lion cubs perform the abortion procedure. Through Kyle, which removes the Antichrist, Santa smashes it with a sledgehammer. It dies. Everyone is safe. Stan gets one Christmas wish for saving the world. He uses it to bring the mother mountain lion back to life. She is reunited with her cubs. The forest is peaceful again. The narrator wraps up the story with the same warm, rhyming voice it has used throughout, and they all lived happily ever after, except for Kyle, who died of AIDS 2 weeks later. The camera cuts to Kyle, lying in a hospital bed, visibly ill, covered in the visual signs of a severe AIDS infection. He is dying. The episode ends with the words, "The end," on screen. Then from off-screen, faintly, Kyle's voice is heard shouting, "God damn it, Cartman!" This is how the episode reveals that everything the audience just watched was a story Cartman told in class. The whole episode, the blood orgy, the Antichrist, Santa with a shotgun, the abortion clinic montage, all of it was a Christmas story that Eric Cartman wrote and read aloud to his 4th grade class. Kyle's AIDS death at the end is not part of the satanic plot. It is Cartman's personal addition, included solely because Cartman wanted Kyle to die of AIDS in his story and saw no reason not to put it in. Mr. Garrison does not stop Cartman from reading the story. He says he does not care what is in it. He just does not want to have to deal with another angry phone call from Kyle's mother. The 12 woodland critters mirror the 12 apostles. Porcupine's Immaculate Conception mirrors the Virgin Mary. The 3 mountain lion cubs mirror the 3 wise men. The star on the Christmas tree leads to the Antichrist, the same way the Star of Bethlehem leads to this Savior in the original story. Parker and Stone built the entire episode as an exact inversion of the Nativity. Every element of the Christmas story present, every element serving the opposite purpose. The episode was written in 4 days. Parker said that when he drove home after the breakthrough on that Saturday afternoon, he rolled down the car window and roared like a lion at the street because he was so relieved that they had an episode and that it was going to be good, not just acceptable, genuinely good, one of the best things they had ever made. He was right. It has a 9.1 and it is still, 20 years later, the most unhinged Christmas special in television history. Not because it is offensive. South Park is offensive constantly, and most of it fades, because it is constructed with the same care as a real Christmas special, using all the same tools, playing all the same notes, and arriving at a blood orgy and the birth of the Antichrist through a series of story steps that each make complete logical sense given the step before them. The warmth of the presentation is not a mask over the darkness. The warmth is the point. It is what makes the darkness work. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The next episode on this list is the one where a real celebrity shot herself in the head and kept going, and the show turned it into the most quietly devastating argument it has ever made about what audiences actually do to the people they claim to love. Section 5. The sacrifice that was always the plan. In March 2008, Britney Spears was everywhere, not in the way celebrities are usually everywhere. On magazine covers, at award shows, releasing music. She was everywhere in the specific way that happens when a famous person is visibly falling apart and the people watching cannot look away. The head shaving, the custody battle over her children, the footage of her attacking a paparazzo's car with an umbrella, the photographs taken of her in parking lots at 2 a.m. Every single moment of it was captured, sold, published, and consumed by an audience that described itself as concerned while paying for more. South Park watched all of this and made an episode about it. Britney's New Look aired on March 19th, 2008. It is Season 12, Episode 2. The show did not make the episode to mock Britney Spears. It made the episode to accuse the audience of watching it. The episode begins at the Marsh house. Randy is forcing the boys to watch a live political debate between Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. An emergency news bulletin interrupts. Britney Spears has been spotted in South Park, and a man has been paid $100,000 for a photograph of her urinating on a ladybug while camping. The boys are immediately more interested in this than in the presidential debate. Randy is too. Stan, Kyle, Cartman, and Butters decide to find Britney and photograph her doing something embarrassing. They will sell the photograph and split the money. Butters objects. He says Britney has been through enough, and they should leave her alone. The other boys do not listen to Butters. They dress him in a squirrel costume so that Britney will defecate on him, which will be the photograph they sell. Butters says this plan is wrong. Nobody hears him. Britney is hiding at a hotel called the Comfort Inn. There is a large crowd of photographers outside already. The boys get past security by telling the guard they are Britney's children and that they have come to visit their mother. Britney is told her children are here to see her. She is immediately and completely transformed. The episode shows her becoming hopeful and open in a way she has not been for the entire time she has been in South Park, hiding from cameras and clearly exhausted. She genuinely believes her children have come to find her. The boys walk in. They are not her children. She realizes this within seconds. The episode does not draw this moment out or play it for laughs. Britney looks at the boys and understands that the one thing she thought was real was also a trick. She has been used to get past her own security by 4 children who want to photograph her being humiliated. She sits with this for a moment. Then she picks up a shotgun and fires it into her own head. Cartman and Butters immediately leave the room. Cartman does not appear again for the rest of the episode. This is the show's quiet signal about what just happened. Cartman, who will stay for almost anything if it is entertaining or profitable, leaves. He does not want to be near what comes next. Even by his standards, this crossed something. Stan and Kyle stay. They stand in the room and look at what is in front of them. The top 2/3 of Britney's skull are gone. Her brainstem is intact. She is still alive. She cannot speak. She cannot see. She cannot hear. She cannot understand what has happened to her. She makes sounds that the episode describes as horrible gurgling. Britney is taken to a hospital. The doctors save her life. She is now a person who is alive and missing most of her head. Stan and Kyle are overcome with guilt. They visit her and apologize. They promise to help her. This is where the episode makes its first turn. Britney's manager is not interested in their apology or their guilt. He moves Britney immediately from the hospital to a recording studio, where she is made to record a new comeback song, while Stan and Kyle watch and insist this will only make everything worse. The manager does not care. The song goes out. She performs at the MTV Video Music Awards. The performance is unwatchable, not because she is bad, but because the audience cannot see what is directly in front of them. Britney stands on stage with 2/3 of her skull missing, making sounds she cannot control, moving in ways that barely resemble a performance. The crowd jeers. A critic sitting near Stan and Kyle notes that she is obviously lip-syncing. Stan looks at this person and says, "She does not have any lips." The critic does not register this information. The crowd keeps jeering. This is the episode's central image, and it is not subtle. An audience watching a person who is visibly destroyed and is seeing only the performance they expected to see and finding it inadequate. Stan and Kyle decide they need to get Britney away from all of it. They come up with a plan to take her to the North Pole by train, far enough from civilization that the media cannot follow. They help her onto the train. To distract the pursuing photographers, Kyle puts on a blonde wig and lets himself be mistaken for Brittany, leading them in the wrong direction. He eventually confronts the photographers and demands to know why they are doing this to her, pointing out that she is in no condition to survive what is being done to her, and that she will die from it. A photographer explains, simply and without embarrassment, that she has to die. Kyle asks what that means. The photographer explains that it is an ancient practice. The village selects a person, builds them up, and then destroys them as a sacrifice to ensure a good harvest. In older times, the sacrifice was stoned to death directly. In modern times, the village prefers to drive the sacrifice to the point where she destroys herself, and then finish the process through constant public humiliation and documentation. It is cleaner. It is more civilized. The corn harvest requires it. Kyle says this is insane. The photographer shrugs. The train stops in a small town. The crowd is already there waiting. Not strangers, people the audience recognizes. Randy Marsh is in the crowd. Sharon Marsh is in the crowd. Sheila Broflovsky is there. Gerald is there. Grandpa Marsh, Officer Bar Brady, Jimmy, Jimbo. Almost every recurring background character from the entire show's run is standing in that field. The whole town. Everyone. They surround Brittany and begin photographing her. Stan and Kyle watch as she dies on the ground from the weight of it. The flashes, the crowd, the relentless documentation of her final moments. She dies in the dirt, while the audience that built her takes pictures of her corpse. Stan and Kyle stand in the crowd, horrified. They look at each other. They look at the people around them, their parents, their neighbors, people they have known their whole lives. Then the crowd begins singing in Latin, a low chanting hymn, and Stan and Kyle, having run out of any other option, roll their eyes and join in. The episode ends with them singing the same song as everyone else. They have given up. Cut to a supermarket. Sheila is shopping. She notes what a good corn harvest they have had this year. On a television in the store, a news anchor announces that a young singer named Miley Cyrus is rapidly growing in popularity and is becoming a massive star. The shoppers look at the television. Randy says the next harvest is going to be even better. The crowd begins singing again. The cycle continues. It was always going to continue. There is always a next one. The episode is based on a short story called The Lottery, written by Shirley Jackson in 1948. In that story, a small town holds an annual lottery where the winner is stoned to death by the community to ensure a good crop. The ritual is so old that nobody in the town remembers why they do it anymore. They just do it because they have always done it, and because the crops depend on it. Parker and Stone took that story and mapped it exactly onto the modern celebrity media machine, and several lines of dialogue in the episode are taken directly from the original story. The argument the episode is making is not complicated. It states it plainly through the photographer. Britney Spears was always going to be destroyed. The machine that built her required that she eventually be destroyed. The audience that consumed her career was the same audience that would consume her destruction, and the same audience that would move on to the next sacrifice when she was gone. The crowd in that field is not a mob of strangers acting outside the normal rules. It is everyone. It is the people who watched the news bulletin about her urinating on a ladybug. It is the people who paid for the photographs. It is the people who watched the episode you are currently watching. When Kyle and Stan join the chant at the end, the show is saying something about itself. It is a television program watched by millions of people. It made an episode using Britney Spears' real name and real public breakdown as material. It drew an audience with that material. The ending, where the two most moral characters in the show give up and join the ritual, is the show acknowledging that it is part of the same system it is criticizing, and that there is no clean way out of that. The real Britney Spears was not happy with the episode, according to reports at the time. This is understandable. Even an episode made in your defense, that argues the people consuming your destruction are the true villains, is still an episode that depicts you shooting most of your head off and dying in a field. She appears as a background character in a later episode called 200 in Season 14. She is in a crowd of celebrities who have been mocked by South Park and are seeking revenge. She is still missing the top of her head. Even Cartman's exit from the episode after the suicide attempt is a piece of real information about the character. Cartman will do terrible things to people with enthusiasm and creativity. He will plan for months. He will destroy people he has specific reasons to destroy. But he does not enjoy watching a person break down in real time with no plan and no game and no revenge logic attached to it. Whatever he is not the crowd in that field. That distinction is small and does not make him good, but the show notes it. Butters said to leave her alone before any of it started. Nobody listened to Butters. They never do. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The next episode on this list is the one where the show stopped treating its most familiar joke as a joke, where Kenny McCormick, who had died and come back hundreds of times, died in a hospital bed from a real illness, and the boys sat in chairs beside him and did not know what to say. And the show went as long as it possibly could without telling a single joke. Section 6. The Terms and Conditions. Every time you download an update on your phone, a box appears on the screen. It contains several thousand words of legal language written in small print. Nobody wrote it to be read. The companies that produce these documents know that the people receiving them will not read them. The documents are long on purpose. They are confusing on purpose. The button that says "Agree" sits at the bottom, and the understanding between the company and the user is that the user will press it without reading anything above it, and life will continue, and nothing will happen. Almost nothing ever does happen. The update installs. The phone works. People go about their day. Kyle Broflovsky pressed agree without reading it. Human Centipede aired on April 27, 2011. It is Season 15, Episode 1, the season premiere of the show's 15th year on television. It has a 7.7 on IMDb. It is based on a 2009 horror film called The Human Centipede, in which a scientist kidnaps 3 people and surgically connects them together from mouth to backside in a single chain, creating one shared digestive system running through 3 human bodies. The film is widely considered one of the most disturbing horror movies ever produced. Parker and Stone watched it and decided it was the perfect way to explain what happens when you do not read your iTunes terms and conditions. The episode opens with the iPad being the most desired item among the children of South Park. Almost every kid has one. Kenny does not have one because his family cannot afford it. Cartman does not have one because his mother went to Best Buy and offered to buy him a cheaper alternative called the Toshiba Handybook instead of the actual iPad, and Cartman has decided that this decision by his mother is the single greatest injustice in human history. Cartman's response to not receiving the specific tablet computer he wanted takes place in the middle of Best Buy, in front of every other customer in the store. He begins screaming at his mother. He tells her, at full volume, that she is, in his words, completely screwing him over. He means that she is cheating him, denying him something he believes he deserves. He does not mean it in any other way, and is completely clear in his own mind about what he is saying. He tells her that if she is going to keep doing this, she should at least be prepared for it first. He says this is not safe. He demands to know why she keeps doing this to him. The other customers in Best Buy hear a child screaming that his mother is treating him terribly and that she should be more responsible. Someone calls the police. A police officer finds Cartman outside and asks if he needs help. Cartman says yes and explains that his mother is trying to, in his words, fuck him. The officer's expression changes. Cartman is taken somewhere safe. His mother looks like a criminal. Cartman looks at the crowd that has gathered and at the expression on everyone's face and begins to understand that his words have been understood in a way that he did not intend, and that this misunderstanding appears to be working entirely in his favor. He decides not to correct it. Meanwhile, Kyle has downloaded the latest iTunes update on his device. The terms and conditions appeared on his screen. Thousands of words of small legal text filled the display. Kyle scrolled to the bottom. He pressed agree. The update installed. He put his phone away. Shortly after this, men in dark suits begin appearing wherever Kyle goes. He notices them following him through South Park. He does not understand why. He goes to his friends and tells them what is happening. His friends explain, one by one, and with complete calm, that they always read the full terms and conditions before pressing agree on anything. Kyle stares at them. The suits get closer. Kyle runs. He makes it to his father Gerald's law office and tells him what is happening. Gerald stands up. He is a lawyer. He tells the men in suits that they are not taking his son anywhere. One of the agents produces a small device and presses a button. Gerald is tasered and falls to the floor. Kyle is taken. He is placed in a cell. 2 other people are already inside, a Japanese man named Junichi Takayama and a young woman. Both of them also clicked agree without reading. The 3 of them sit together in the cell. None of them know what comes next. At a product launch event, styled exactly after the real presentations that Apple's Steve Jobs used to give, with a darkened stage and a single spotlight, and an audience of Apple employees sitting in reverent silence. Steve Jobs walks out to introduce his new product. The crowd is expectant. Jobs has been building toward this for a long time. The human centipede is unveiled. Junichi, Kyle, and the woman are brought out on all fours. They are wearing only small white cloths around their waists. They have been surgically connected mouth to backside in a chain. Junichi is at the front of the chain with an iPhone attached to his forehead. Kyle is in the middle with his mouth connected to Junichi from behind. The woman is at the rear with an iPad attached to her backside, powered by whatever passes through the chain. The crowd applauds. Jobs explains what the product does. It does email. It does web browsing. The crowd goes wild. Kyle's position in the chain is the middle. This is the worst place to be. The film the episode is based on is specific about this. In The Human Centipede, the middle position is assigned to the character who tried to escape as a punishment. It is the most painful position to heal from because both ends of the person have been operated on. It is worse than being at the front because the person at the front only receives what is done to them directly. The person in the middle receives what passes through from the person in front. Kyle is in the middle. Kyle pressed agree without reading. These 2 facts are connected. Jobs attempts to train the device to read. He places documents in front of it. Kyle cannot interact with them the way Jobs wants. Jobs grows frustrated. He puts the creation through a series of tests, trying different methods. In one of the more specific cruelties of the episode, Junichi is served a meal while Kyle attempts to communicate his food preferences from his position in the chain. Kyle, speaking as clearly as he can manage under the circumstances, indicates that he would like vanilla paste. Junichi is given cuttlefish and asparagus instead. Junichi eats the cuttlefish. He appears to enjoy it. The camera holds on Kyle's face for a moment. The episode does not show what happens next. It does not need to. At one point, Jobs attempts to motivate the device by tricking it into believing it has been rescued. The 3 people are transported to what appears to be a medical facility. Doctors in white coats tell them they are going to be separated and freed. Kyle begins to believe this is real. He is relieved. He has been through something genuinely terrible, and the idea that it is over reaches him visibly. It is a simulation inside an Apple store. Jobs built the entire fake hospital environment inside the store to see if hope would make the device more cooperative. It does not. Kyle, even in the worst circumstances of his life, is still Kyle. He cannot perform differently because Jobs wants him to. Jobs is disappointed and moves on to other tests. Back in South Park, Cartman has appeared on the Dr. Phil television program with his mother. He tells the host and the studio audience that his mother has been doing this to him his entire life. He gives examples. He uses the same word throughout. The audience is completely convinced that Leanne Cartman has been mistreating her son for years. Leanne tries to explain. She says he means she is denying him things he wants. Nobody in the studio believes her. The audience turns on her completely. A man in the front row stands up and announces that he always kisses his own son before doing what Cartman is describing, and immediately demonstrates this on the child sitting next to him in a way that suggests the man has misunderstood the situation in a direction significantly worse than the original misunderstanding. Nobody notices this. All attention remains on Leanne as the apparent villain of the piece. Cartman is given the first ever human centipede as a gift from Steve Jobs, presented at the taping as a gesture of goodwill toward a suffering child. Cartman receives it with complete and genuine joy. He announces to the audience that it does email, it does web browsing, and it deposits waste into Kyle's mouth. He is holding the device and grinning. This is the best moment of his life. Gerald has recovered from being tasered. He goes to the Apple Store with Stan, Kenny, and Butters to find a way to free Kyle. The Apple Store staff, called geniuses, which was the real term Apple used for their employees at the time, perform a series of increasingly strange rituals to figure out what can be done. They conduct something called a quickening, where the geniuses interface with each other using beams of light from their mouths. They perform a second ritual involving floating colored bubbles. After considerable deliberation and ceremony, they reach a conclusion. Kyle's agreement can be made legally void if Gerald, who uses a PC and is not an Apple customer, signs up with Apple and creates a family account, bringing Kyle under a family agreement rather than his individual one. Gerald agrees without hesitation. He will do whatever is necessary. He joins Apple. He creates the account. The paperwork is completed and sent to Jobs. Jobs receives the notification. He is legally required to release Kyle. He makes the arrangements with visible reluctance. Cartman is informed that his human centipede is being recalled. The product is discontinued. Kyle is going to be freed and separated from the chain. Everything Cartman has spent this episode working toward and receiving and celebrating is being taken away. He looks up at the ceiling. He starts screaming at God. He uses the same word, the one that started everything in Best Buy, and accuses God of doing to him exactly what he accused his mother of doing. He screams that it is not fair. He screams that God keeps doing this to him. He is furious in the specific way that only Cartman can be furious, which is the way of a person who believes the universe exists to serve his preferences and has just been informed firmly that it does not. A bolt of lightning comes through the ceiling and strikes him directly. The final shot of the episode is Cartman in a hospital bed. He is covered in casts from the lightning strike. He is crying. Leanne sits in a chair beside him. She is reading a magazine. She does not look at him. She does not comfort him. She turns a page. The episode ends. The show is making a specific argument about Leanne in this final image that is easy to miss. She is not being cruel to Cartman in this moment. She is not punishing him or ignoring him out of spite. She has simply reached the end of what she is able to perform on his behalf. He accused her of abuse on national television. He put her through the Best Buy scene and the Dr. Phil appearance and the studio audience turning on her. She is present. She is nearby. She is reading her magazine. That is all she has left to give him, and she is giving it. Kyle, by this point, has been separated from the chain and freed. The episode does not show his recovery. It does not show him processing what happened, or talking to anyone about it, or receiving any kind of support or acknowledgement that something terrible was done to him. He is simply no longer part of the device. Life moves on. South Park moves on. This is one of the things the show does that can look like carelessness and is actually a deliberate choice. The horror of what happened to Kyle is not in the event itself, as awful as the event is. The horror is in how quickly it stops mattering. The episode ends. The next episode begins. Kyle is fine. Nobody mentions it. He clicked agree. He did not read what he was agreeing to. Everything else followed from that one moment of not paying attention, which is something every single person watching the episode has done on every device they own, probably that same day. The episode is not really about Apple. Apple is the vehicle. The episode is about the gap between what we technically consent to and what we actually understand we are consenting to, and about the fact that this gap is so large and so normal that we have all simply decided to live inside it and hope for the best. Kyle hoped for the best. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Section 7. The most normal thing that keeps happening. The first school shooting in this episode happens during a math test. Mrs. Nelson is handing back graded papers. She is explaining which questions the class got wrong and going over the correct answers. Cartman is furious because he copied his answers from his classmate, Tolkien Black, and still failed, which means Tolkien must have deliberately written wrong answers on his own paper to make Cartman fail, which is the kind of conspiracy only Cartman would construct, and the kind of injustice only Cartman would treat as the most important thing happening in a given moment. Then the gunshots start. They come from the hallway. There are screams. There are sirens almost immediately after. The class continues. Mrs. Nelson keeps teaching. The students keep sitting at their desks. Nobody looks at the door. Nobody ducks under anything. Nobody reacts in any way that suggests what is happening in the hallway is connected to them or relevant to what they are doing. A SWAT team member kicks the classroom door open and storms in with full gear and a weapon raised. He scans the room. The class continues. Mrs. Nelson does not stop talking. Cartman raises his hand to complain about his test score. The SWAT team member backs out of the room. A voice from the hallway says, "Shoot her down." Mrs. Nelson says, "Now let us move on to the next equation." Dead Kids aired on September 26th, 2018. It is Season 22, Episode 1. It has an 8.1 on IMDb. It aired 5 months after the shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, where 17 people were killed, and during the height of the student-led movement that followed. The episode does not mention Parkland by name. It does not need to. The episode is not about Parkland specifically. It is about the 30 years of school shootings before Parkland that produced the specific cultural condition the episode is describing. A condition where the shooting happens in the hallway and the math class keeps going. The plot of the episode is not about the shooting. This is the first and most important thing to understand about it. The shooting is the setting. The plot is about Sharon Marsh and whether she is going through menopause. Sharon is Stan's mother. She is watching the news when reports of the shooting come in. She is immediately and genuinely distressed. She goes to the school and finds Stan walking out with the other students, completely fine, and grabs him and tells him they are going to deal with this as a family. Stan initially thinks she is talking about his math test score. He has to be told that she means the shooting. He struggles to remember which specific shooting she is referring to. Randy sees Sharon's distress and decides there must be an explanation for it. The explanation he settles on is menopause. He does not consider that she might be responding rationally to children being killed at school, because in the world of this episode, responding rationally to children being killed at school is not a position any adult in South Park holds. The adults around Sharon, Randy, the other parents, the doctors at the school, everyone, have all reached a place where school shootings are processed the same way weather is processed. They happen. They are noted. Life continues. Randy goes to the school where the shooting occurred to ask a doctor what menopause is and how long it lasts. The doctor explains the medical details. Randy is horrified to learn it could last years. The idea that his wife might be visibly upset about school shootings for years is the part of this situation he finds most alarming. Sharon goes to a therapist. She sits across from a professional and explains her fear that one day she is going to get the phone call telling her that her child was shot, that she lies awake at night thinking about it, that she cannot understand why everyone around her seems to have accepted this as normal. The therapist appears to be listening. Then the camera pulls back and Randy is in the room too, doing charades behind the therapist's back, miming the word menopause by pointing at himself and then making a circular gesture meant to suggest hormonal cycles. The therapist is taking notes based on Randy's charades rather than on what Sharon is saying. The town arms the students. This happens approximately halfway through the episode and is treated with the same casual matter-of-factness as everything else. The school board decides that since shootings keep happening, the students should be given guns to defend themselves. The children of South Park Elementary now carry firearms to class. This does not solve the problem. Another shooting happens. The children are now armed participants in it, rather than just targets. Sharon confronts Randy directly. She tells him she is not going through menopause. She tells him she had her period that morning, which is biological confirmation that menopause is not the issue. Randy briefly entertains the idea that she might just be a little bit moody. Sharon loses her composure entirely. She shouts at him that this is not about her hormones. She shouts at him that she wants him to be angry. She says that every day there is another school shooting and that it used to be a big deal. She says she wants it to be a big deal again. She says she wants everyone to be shocked. She wants everyone to be sad. She wants people to feel what she is feeling instead of planning around it like it is the weather. Randy stares at her. He has genuinely no idea what she is talking about. This speech is the episode's thesis, spoken out loud by the character the show has set up as the only sane person in the story. Sharon is not being written as extreme or irrational. She is being written as the person in the room who has not yet gone numb, and the episode is using everyone else's reaction to her, the menopause theory, the therapy sessions, the gentle concern about her emotional state, to show how completely the people around her have medicated themselves against something that should not be medicatable. Another shooting happens while Randy is still processing Sharon's speech. He gets a text. He reads it. He goes back to singing the romantic song he had prepared to help Sharon feel better about herself. He does not mention the new shooting. Cartman's subplot runs alongside all of this. He has become convinced that Tolkien deliberately got answers wrong on the test, so that Cartman would copy them and fail. He spends the episode gathering evidence, surveilling Tolkien, approaching Tolkien's girlfriend Nicole for inside information, and constructing an increasingly detailed theory about the specific reasons Tolkien would want him to fail. He treats this investigation with the complete focus and seriousness that the adults around him are not applying to the children being shot in school hallways. There is another shooting while Cartman and Tolkien are both trying to get back to class to take the makeup test. They run through the school during an active shooting, not to escape it, but to make sure they get to the classroom in time. Getting to the test is more urgent than avoiding the gunfire. They make it. The test begins. Cartman copies Tolkien's answers again. He decides that Tolkien is letting him copy correctly this time, which means Tolkien did change the answers before, which means Cartman was right. He throws his test paper away in order to fail on purpose and deprive Tolkien of the satisfaction. He has applied more strategic thinking to this math test situation than any adult in the episode has applied to the shooting situation. The ending of the episode is the part that is hardest to watch if you watch it straight, without looking for jokes. Sharon has been worn down. She has fought this all episode and found nobody on her side. Not her husband, not her neighbors, not her therapist, not the school. She is exhausted by being the only person who cannot simply absorb this information and move on. In the backyard, she tells Randy she has been a little emotional lately. She apologizes. She says maybe she overreacted. Randy is immediately warm and loving toward her. He is relieved. His wife is back. They embrace. The phone rings. A voice on the other end tells them that Stan has been shot. Sharon hears this. She goes very still. She says it is not the end of the world. Randy holds her. He is delighted. She has finally come around. They stand together in the backyard, holding each other, while somewhere a phone call is trying to tell them their son has been shot, and they have decided together that this is not worth being upset about. Randy says, "I love you, Sharon." The episode ends. The argument is not hidden. The show is saying that the emotional journey this episode has tracked, Sharon moving from distress to acceptance, is not a healing arc. It is a breaking arc. She was right at the beginning. She was right throughout. The town did not bring her around to a correct position. The town ground her down until she stopped being right out loud. And the moment she stops, the man who ground her down tells her he loves her and means it, because what he loves is the version of her that does not make him feel anything about dead children. The episode aired 5 months after Parkland. The student survivors of that shooting had spent those 5 months on television, in front of Congress, in interviews and speeches and organized marches, saying exactly what Sharon says in this episode, that they want people to be angry, that they want this to be a big deal, that they want the country to feel what they are feeling instead of planning around it. The episode does not offer a solution. It does not suggest one exists. It ends with a phone call about a child being shot and the two parents deciding together that this is manageable. Parker and Stone had been watching America respond to school shootings for decades before this episode. What they saw, and what the episode depicts, is a population that did exactly what Sharon does by the end. Not all at once. Gradually. Shooting by shooting, year by year, until the math class just keeps going, and the SWAT team is just another thing that comes through the door sometimes, and the only person who cannot adjust to this is the one who gets treated like she has a hormone problem. The school is shot up multiple times across 22 minutes of television. Each time it happens with less reaction than the time before. This is not an accident of pacing. It is the point, compressed into a single episode's runtime, __quote, _6, __. The next episode on this list is the one where South Park stopped treating its most familiar joke as a joke. Kenny McCormick had died hundreds of times before this episode. He had been killed in every way the writers could think of and came back every week without explanation. The show had trained its audience to feel nothing when he died. Then one episode arrived where he did not die from an explosion or a freak accident or something absurd. He died from an illness in a hospital, slowly, while his friend sat beside him and did not know what to say. And Parker and Stone went as long as they possibly could without telling a single joke. Section 8. The death that actually counted. Kenny McCormick had died before this episode more times than anyone bothered to count. He had been run over by vehicles. He had been crushed by falling objects. He had been shot, exploded, burned, eaten by animals, launched into space, and killed by diseases that did not exist in the real world. The show had developed an entire ritual around it. Someone would say, "Oh my God, they killed Kenny." Someone else would say, "You bastards." The next episode would begin, and Kenny would be back in his orange parka, and nobody would mention what had happened the week before. This had been going on for 4 full seasons. The audience had been trained, deliberately and completely, to feel nothing when Kenny died. The death was the punchline. The reset was the punchline after the punchline. The whole cycle was a joke about how little individual deaths mean when they happen over and over with no weight attached to them. Kenny Dies aired on December 5th, 2001. It is Season 5. Episode 13, it has an 8.8 on IMDb. Trey Parker said in the DVD commentary that the goal for this episode was to go as long as possible without telling a single joke. For a show that had never gone more than a few minutes without a joke in its entire history, this was a genuine commitment to something new. The episode has funny moments. It cannot help itself entirely, but they exist at the edges of something the show was doing straight for the first time. Kenny was dying, not in the weekly throwaway way, dying the way real people die, from an illness, in a hospital, with his friends sitting in chairs beside him, not knowing what to say. The episode begins in an abortion clinic. A woman is giving permission for her aborted fetus to be used for stem cell research. This detail matters because it places the episode inside a real political debate happening in America at the exact moment it aired. In August 2001, President George W. Bush had signed an order limiting federal money for stem cell research. The argument was about whether cells from aborted fetuses could be used in medical research that might save lives. It was everywhere in the news. Parker and Stone were writing inside that debate and using it as the engine of their plot. The truck carrying the fetuses from the clinic to a research facility crashes after a deer runs across the road. Cartman happens to be riding his bike past the accident. He sees the cargo. He does not know exactly what the cargo is at first, but he knows it has value. He steals it and immediately starts making phone calls, pitching the fetuses to medical research companies in the rapid, aggressive tone of someone who believes he is about to close a very large deal. He keeps saying, "You are breaking my balls," to everyone who does not immediately give him what he wants. He finally gets a deal. Then the government bans stem cell research. He is stuck. Meanwhile, the boys are called to the principal's office. The episode does not build to this moment dramatically. It arrives quietly. Kenny has been sick for a little while, coughing, not quite himself. The principal and a doctor sit across from the boys and explain that Kenny has been diagnosed with a terminal muscular disease. The show does not name it in the episode, but it is confirmed in the production notes to be muscular dystrophy, a condition where the muscles of the body break down gradually over time. The person gets weaker. They lose the ability to move. Eventually, they lose the ability to breathe. There is no cure. Kenny is going to die, and the only question is how long it takes. The boys leave the office. Stan goes quiet in a way that is different from his normal quiet. Kyle starts researching because researching is what Kyle does when he does not know how to feel. Cartman cries. This is the detail that surprises the audience more than almost anything else in the episode, because Cartman does not cry for other people. He cries for himself, constantly and loudly and with great commitment. Genuine grief for a friend is not something his character had shown before this moment, and the show plays it without irony. Cartman is wiping his eyes and visibly upset, and the camera does not mock him for it. This is important to hold on to, because the episode is going to return to it. Stan cannot go to the hospital. Every time the other boys go to visit Kenny, Stan finds a reason to stay away. He never explains it clearly, and the episode never forces him to explain it clearly, because the show understands that people who cannot face loss do not always have a clean explanation for why. Stan loves Kenny. That is precisely the problem. The love is what makes the hospital room impossible. Chef gives Stan the speech about God. He tells Stan that God takes the people closest to us because it makes him feel better about himself. He says God is very vengeful and has never gotten over something that happened thousands of years ago and does not care who he takes as long as it makes people sad. Stan asks why God gives us anything at all if he is just going to take it away. Chef says that if you want to make a baby cry, first you give it a lollipop, then you take it away. If you never give it the lollipop, there would be nothing to cry about. This is not a comforting speech in the traditional sense. It does not tell Stan that Kenny is going to a better place, or that there is a plan, or that everything will be okay. It tells him that loss is built into the structure of having things you love, and that the pain is the proof of the love, and that there is no way to have one without eventually experiencing the other. Stan hears this and something shifts. He finally gets up and goes to the hospital. He is too late. The room is empty when he arrives. Kenny's bed is unmade. The small teddy bear that someone brought to the hospital to keep Kenny company is lying on the floor beside the bed, still positioned as if it is holding on to the mattress. Stan stands in the doorway and understands what the empty room means before anyone says a word to him. Kyle finds him. He explains quietly that Kenny just stopped breathing. It happened quickly at the end. He also tells Stan that Kenny's last words were, "Where is Stan?" The episode does not linger on this. It states it and moves forward. But it is the worst moment in the episode, and possibly one of the worst moments in the show's entire run, not because of what it shows, but because of what it means. The person who could not bring himself to be there, who kept finding reasons to stay away, is the person his dying friend was asking for at the very end. Kenny spent his final moments wondering where Stan was. Stan spent those same moments somewhere else, working up the courage to come. Stan says he was Kenny's worst friend. He means every word of it. Meanwhile, Cartman has realized that stem cell research, if restored, might be able to help treat the kind of condition Kenny has. He also realizes that stem cells might theoretically be used to grow a duplicate of a Shakey's Pizza restaurant, which is something he has wanted for a very long time. He visits a researcher who confirms the medical possibilities. The researcher also tells him that lumber would be more practical for the pizza restaurant idea. Cartman does not appear to register this. He goes to Congress. He testifies before the House of Representatives about Kenny, and about the importance of medical research, and about the cruelty of denying dying children the possibility of treatment. The speech is genuinely moving. Cartman is composed and sincere, and he makes a compelling argument. Then he sings "Heat of the Moment" by the band Asia to close his testimony. Congress lifts the ban on stem cell research. The room applauds. Cartman has genuinely achieved something for his dying friend. He then begins collecting fetuses from abortion clinics around the area with the enthusiasm of someone running a very successful small business. A montage plays, set to country music. He visits multiple clinics. He is building toward something. With the ban lifted, scientists confirm that stem cell research could potentially help people with the kind of condition Kenny has. There is genuine hope that something can be done. Stan finds out and runs to the hospital believing there might still be time. He runs through the hallways. He gets to Kenny's room. The room is empty. The teddy bear is on the floor by the unmade bed. The show uses the same image twice. The first time Stan sees the empty room, it is the actual moment of loss. The second time, which comes after a brief dream sequence where Stan imagines arriving in time and finding Kenny sitting up and recovering. It lands harder because the audience has already experienced it once and knows exactly what it means, and the dream made them hope for one moment that this time it would be different. And it is not different. At the funeral, Cartman bursts through the doors. He is screaming that a miracle has occurred. He pulls Stan and Kyle away from the service and brings them to a building nearby. He has used every last stem cell he collected to grow his own personal Shakey's Pizza restaurant from scratch. It is fully operational. It has seating and a game room and a functioning kitchen. He did not spend a single cell on research for Kenny. The congressional testimony, the singing, the tears, all of it was calculated from the beginning. He needed the stem cell ban lifted so he could have his pizza restaurant. Kenny's illness was the vehicle he used to make that happen. Kyle beats Cartman unconscious on the spot. Stan watches this happen and realizes something. He has been calling himself Kenny's worst friend all episode. and carrying that as the heaviest thing he owns. Watching Cartman get beaten, Stan understands that the title belongs somewhere else. He was not Kenny's worst friend. He loved Kenny too much to be in the room. Cartman performed love for Kenny in front of Congress and then built a pizza restaurant on his grave. These are not the same thing. Kenny stayed dead for the rest of Season 5 and through all of Season 6 and into the Season 6 finale, Red Sleigh Down, where he returned. This was the longest period in the show's history where Kenny was simply gone. Season 6 was built around his absence. The show tried replacing him with Butters, then with Tweak, then eventually gave up and just had the 4 boys be 3 boys for a while. Nothing fit. The gap was visible. There is one more layer to this episode that did not exist when it aired. In Season 14, a multi-part story called the Coon Trilogy revealed the true nature of Kenny's curse. Kenny cannot permanently die. He comes back after every death, but the curse has a specific additional cruelty. Every time he comes back, the people around him forget that he died. They have no memory of it. Life simply continues as if the death never happened. Kenny remembers every single one. This means Kenny experienced every moment of his body breaking down from muscular dystrophy. He lay in that hospital bed, feeling his muscles weaken, breathing with more difficulty each day, losing the ability to move. He did this without anyone around him who remembered what was happening, because the curse erases the memory from everyone except him. He asked where Stan was with his last breath, and then he died, and then he came back, and nobody remembered any of it. He carries all of it, every death, every slow one, every quick one, every absurd one. He remembers them all. The joke that the show ran for 5 seasons, Kenny dies, nobody cares, everyone forgets, turns out to have been Kenny's actual experience the whole time. He is the only one for whom it was never a joke. The episode is 8.8 on IMDb, not because it is the funniest South Park episode or the most outrageous. It is 8.8 because it made an audience that had been trained to laugh at Kenny's death sit quietly for 22 minutes and feel it. Parker and Stone took the show's most disposable running gag and, for one episode, made it mean something. They showed what the joke had been covering the whole time. Then they brought him back. Then they kept killing him. The joke resumed. But the episode exists. The empty room exists. The teddy bear on the floor exists. Where is Stan exists. You cannot unhear it. __. Quote _7 _ section 9. The word that would not go away. Randy Marsh is on Wheel of Fortune. He has made it to the bonus round, which means he has already won some money and now has a chance to win significantly more. His family is in the audience watching him. The people of South Park are watching from home. The category is revealed: people who annoy you. Randy is given 5 letters to start with: R, T, S, L, and E. He asks for 4 more letters: B, N, G, and O. The board fills in around the letters he already has. The puzzle reads N_G, G-E-R-S. Randy has 10 seconds to solve it. He can see what the answer is. He stands at the podium and the clock runs, and the audience watches, and Randy looks at the board, and looks at the audience, and looks back at the board. He has 10 seconds, and the answer is right there, and he cannot think of another word that fits, and the clock is running, and he opens his mouth. He says it on live national television, with apologies to Jesse Jackson, aired on March 7th, 2007. It is Season 11, Episode 1, the season premiere. It has an 8.9 on IMDb. Parker and Stone had wanted to make this episode for a long time. The first scene, Randy on Wheel of Fortune, was the original idea, and for a while, it was the only idea. They could not figure out what the rest of the episode would be. Then, in November 2006, a comedian named Michael Richards, who was famous for playing Kramer on Seinfeld, had a meltdown during a stand-up performance at a comedy club in Los Angeles. He screamed the same word repeatedly at black members of the audience who had been heckling him. The footage spread immediately, and the story was everywhere. Richards then went on Jesse Jackson's radio program to apologize publicly. Parker and Stone watched all of this, and the rest of the episode came into focus. The immediate fallout after Randy says the word on television is swift and total. The show cuts to a technical difficulties screen the moment the word leaves his mouth. His family in the audience goes pale. The black members of the Wheel of Fortune audience turn and stare. Randy's face does the thing faces do when a person realizes in real time that they have just done something that cannot be undone. He seeks out Jesse Jackson to apologize. This is presented as the logical first step, the official process for this specific kind of public mistake, the accepted path toward being forgiven. Randy goes to Jackson's office. Jackson bends over his desk and tells Randy that the way to apologize is to kiss his backside. Randy does this. A photographer is present and takes a picture. The picture runs in the news with the headline, "Reverend Jesse Jackson receives apology in the end." Randy believes this has handled it. He goes home and tells his family the situation is resolved. He finds Stan and tells him that everything is okay now because he apologized to Jesse Jackson. Stan finds Tolkien Black, South Park Elementary's one black student whose name the show has been using as a joke about the concept of token diversity since the beginning, and tells him that his dad apologized to Jesse Jackson, so everything should be fine now. Tolkien looks at Stan and says, "Jesse Jackson is not the emperor of black people." Stan says, "He told my dad he was." This exchange is the center of the entire episode, not the word itself, not the apology, not the public fallout or the political debate. The center is this: a white boy explaining to his black friend that the official process of apology has been completed, and the black friend explaining that the official process has nothing to do with him personally, and that the assumption that it does is its own problem. Tolkien is still angry. Stan cannot understand why. Stan keeps coming back to the fact that his dad apologized, that the apology was public, that Jesse Jackson accepted it. In Stan's understanding of how this works, these steps should produce a result. The apology goes in, and the forgiveness comes out, and everyone moves forward. Tolkien's continued anger does not fit this understanding, and Stan finds it genuinely confusing rather than something he is dismissing out of cruelty. The show is interested in this confusion. It does not present Stan as a bad person. It presents him as a person who has never had to understand something from the inside, and therefore genuinely cannot see why the official process does not cover everything. Meanwhile, the town has given Randy a label. He is now the N-word guy. This label follows him everywhere. He is refused service at stores. He is called out by name by a comedian at a local comedy club who uses the label as a punchline while the crowd laughs. He is chased down the street by an angry group of men who find his use of the word offensive. Everywhere he goes, the label arrives before him and shapes how every person in the room treats him. Randy finds this deeply unfair. He organizes. He goes to Washington with a group of other people who have said the word publicly and been labeled for it, including Michael Richards, who appears in the episode as a weeping, broken figure who confesses to Randy that he is not actually a very good comedian and only said the word because he thought being offensive was a substitute for being funny. This is Parker and Stone's most direct statement about Richards. Not that what he did was forgivable, but that it came from a place of creative failure rather than pure hatred, which is a different kind of condemnation. Randy and his group lobby Congress to make the word itself illegal. The argument is that if the word cannot be said, the label cannot be applied. Congress passes the measure. Anyone who uses the word and the label guy in the same sentence with fewer than 7 words between them can be prosecuted. Randy is relieved. The label is now legally unusable. The problem is solved. The problem is not solved. Tolkien is still angry. Stan still does not understand why. The law did not change what the word means to Tolkien. The law did not change what it felt like to hear it said. The law addressed the surface, the label applied to Randy, without touching the thing underneath, which is the reason the word has the power it has in the first place. At school, a small man named Dr. David Nelson has been brought in to speak to the students about sensitivity. He is a little person and he travels to schools nationwide, teaching children about treating others with respect. When he walks onto the stage in the school assembly, Cartman starts laughing. Not at anything Dr. Nelson has said, just at his existence. Cartman cannot stop. He laughs through the entire assembly. Dr. Nelson cannot get a single sentence out. The school tries to quiet Cartman. Nothing works. Cartman laughs until the assembly falls apart completely. Dr. Nelson tries a different approach. He gets the other students to start calling Cartman Fatso. This works exactly as intended. Cartman immediately stops laughing and becomes furious, demanding to know why he is being called names and insisting it is unacceptable. Dr. Nelson points out that this is exactly the point he has been trying to make. Words used against a person cause pain regardless of whether the person using them thinks they are funny. Cartman thinks about this for a moment, then he starts laughing again. Dr. Nelson gives up. He storms off saying he has proven his point. The students look at each other. None of them are sure what point was proven. This uncertainty is intentional. The episode is not presenting Dr. Nelson's lesson as a clean success. It lands for some people and does not land for others, and the people it does not land for are not always going to be reachable through a school assembly. The episode ends with Stan finding Tolkien one final time. He is frustrated. He wants to fix this, and he does not know how. He says something that is more honest than anything else he has said in the episode. He tells Tolkien that he does not know what it feels like to have that word used against him. He says he is not black, and he never will be black, and there is no way for him to know from the inside what that word does to the person it is aimed at. He says he will never fully get it. Tolkien goes quiet. He looks at Stan. He says, "That is all I wanted to hear. Not an apology, not a pledge, not a law passed by Congress or a public ceremony or a kiss on someone's backside in an office. Just an honest acknowledgement of the limit, that some things cannot be fully understood from the outside, and that pretending otherwise is its own kind of dismissal." Tolkien does not need Stan to understand completely. He needs Stan to stop pretending that he does. Stan says it. He means it. The episode ends. The real target of the episode is not Randy, even though Randy is the one who said the word. Randy is a well-meaning idiot who made a terrible mistake and then tried to fix it through every official channel available to him. He followed every step of the process correctly. He apologized to the right person in the accepted way. He lobbied for a law. He built a scholarship foundation in the name of African American students. He did everything that the public script says you do after this kind of mistake. And none of it reached Tolkien, because Tolkien is not a process. He is a person. And the word reached him in a place that processes do not touch. Parker and Stone were specific about their inspiration in the DVD commentary for this episode. Vernon Chatman, one of the show's writers, is biracial. When Richards made his public apology to Jesse Jackson, Chatman was furious. Not at Richards specifically, but at the idea that Jackson could accept an apology on behalf of all black people, as if there were a single authority figure who could receive apologies and distribute forgiveness outward. Tolkien's line about Jackson not being the emperor of black people came directly from Chatman's real reaction. The line that Stan delivers at the end, "I will never fully understand," came from the same conversation. The episode uses the word uncensored throughout. It appears dozens of times. Comedy Central allowed it. The episode attracted almost no public backlash when it aired, which was unusual for South Park and which Parker and Stone found interesting. They had expected a significant response to the uncensored use and did not receive one. Their theory was that the episode was clearly not using the word to celebrate it or make it funny, and that audiences could tell the difference between a show examining something and a show endorsing it. The episode is 8.9 on IMDb, not because it is the most outrageous thing South Park ever did. It is 8.9 because it handled one of the most difficult subjects in American life, with more honesty and more precision than most serious adult programs manage. It did not pretend the word is just a word. It did not pretend the apology fixes everything. It did not pretend that a law or a scholarship or a public ceremony gets to the place where the actual damage lives. It ended with a 10-year-old boy admitting the limit of what he can know, and another 10-year-old boy accepting that admission as the most honest thing he had been offered all episode, which it was. __8__. The next episode on this list is the one built entirely around a 9-year-old sociopath faking a medical condition so he can say whatever he wants to, whoever he wants, without any consequences. And the moment the fake condition starts working backwards on him, exposing the one thing he has spent his entire life making sure nobody would ever see. Section 10. The One Thing. Cartman could not control Tourette syndrome is a real condition. People who have it experience sudden repeated movements or sounds that they cannot control. These are called tics. Some tics are physical, blinking, head movements, shoulder shrugs. Some tics are vocal, sounds, words, sometimes phrases. A small percentage of people with Tourette syndrome experience a specific kind of vocal tic, where they involuntarily say words or phrases that are offensive or inappropriate. This particular type gets the most attention in popular culture, even though it affects only a small portion of people who actually have the condition. Most people with Tourette syndrome do not experience it. Cartman found out about the offensive words part and decided he wanted that. Le Petit Tourette aired on October 3, 2007. It is Season 11, Episode 8. It has an 8.9 on IMDb. It is the episode where Cartman fakes having Tourette syndrome so that he can say absolutely anything he wants to anyone he wants with complete social protection, and where that plan begins working against him in a way he did not anticipate and cannot stop, and where the show reveals, in one small, specific, involuntary moment, the single thing about Cartman that he has spent his entire existence making sure nobody would ever know. The episode begins with Cartman at a toy store. He is in the checkout line. He has a toy he wants to buy. The line is slow. Cartman, being Cartman, begins saying things to the people around him. A store employee tells him he cannot speak to customers that way. Then, a young boy named Thomas walks past, and Thomas has an involuntary vocal tic. And in front of the entire store, Thomas shouts a word he did not choose to shout. The store employee immediately apologizes to Thomas and tells him it is perfectly okay. Thomas gets to continue doing whatever he was doing. Nobody is angry at him. Nobody tells him he cannot speak that way. Cartman watches this exchange with the focused attention of a scientist observing a discovery. He goes home and practices in front of a mirror. He works on delivering random offensive words and phrases in a way that sounds involuntary. He checks his timing. He rehearses the facial expression. A slight wince, as if the word surprised even him. He is thorough and methodical about this, the way he is thorough and methodical about everything he genuinely wants. The next day at school, he announces that he has Tourette syndrome. He demonstrates. A word comes out. He winces apologetically. The teacher responds with immediate concern and tells him it is completely okay and that the class will be supportive. Cartman's eyes move slowly around the room, measuring the reaction, confirming that the system works the way he thought it would. Within days, Cartman has said things to virtually every adult in South Park that would normally result in serious consequences and has faced 0 of those consequences. He tells a police officer something extremely specific about the officer's wife. He says things in class that would get any other student sent home permanently. He walks through the school saying whatever crosses his mind to whoever is standing nearby and receives concern and accommodation in return. The fake condition is functioning as a perfect shield. He decides this is not big enough. He contacts a television news program and arranges to appear on air as a child with Tourette syndrome. He will be interviewed live in front of a national audience. He will be able to say anything. He will have the largest possible platform with the strongest possible protection. He begins preparing his material, going through a mental list of every target he has been waiting for, an opportunity to address without consequences. Meanwhile, Kyle has found out that Cartman is faking. He has done the research, talked to medical professionals, and confirmed that what Cartman is performing does not match how the condition actually works. He tells people, nobody listens to him. The adults around Cartman are so committed to being understanding and supportive that the idea of questioning his diagnosis feels wrong to them, like they would be being cruel to a sick child. Kyle's evidence does not matter because the social dynamic has already been established. Cartman is the patient, and anyone who challenges him is the problem. Kyle is stuck. He cannot stop the television appearance through the normal channels because the normal channels are all working in Cartman's favor. He starts looking for another way. The episode has a second storyline running underneath the Cartman plot. A real child with Tourette syndrome named Thomas has become Cartman's assigned buddy at school. The administration paired them together so that Cartman would have someone who understood his condition. Thomas has the actual condition. His tics are genuine, and he cannot control them. When Thomas has a tic in public, people around him are kind. When Cartman has a fake tic in public, people around him are also kind. The two responses look identical from the outside. Thomas finds Cartman entertaining at first. He has never met someone whose tics sound so specifically targeted. Then, he realizes what Cartman is doing. Thomas is upset not because Cartman is benefiting from the social protection that the condition provides. Thomas understands the value of that protection better than anyone. But because Cartman is using the performance to do deliberate harm while hiding behind a cover that Thomas and people like him depend on for genuine reasons. Thomas also has real struggles that the episode treats with care. His condition causes him to blurt out things he deeply does not want to say. He involuntarily reveals that he cries when he masturbates. He involuntarily reveals that his parents are getting divorced. These are private things, painful things, and they come out of his mouth in public without his permission. He cannot stop them. He lives with the specific helplessness of a person whose inner life keeps escaping into the world without his consent. This is the condition Cartman is pretending to have. The episode puts these two characters next to each other and lets the contrast do the work without commenting on it directly. Back with Cartman, the fake condition has been working so smoothly and for long enough that something unexpected begins to happen. He is sitting in class and he says something he did not plan to say. It slips out before he can stop it. He looks surprised by it. He closes his mouth. He replays what just came out. He cannot quite believe it. He tries to continue normally. It happens again, then again. The fake Tourette syndrome is starting to work backwards on him. Because he has spent weeks performing the outward behavior of a condition where your internal thoughts escape your control, his actual internal thoughts have begun escaping his actual control. His brain has been practicing the release of unwanted words for so long that the habit has started applying to things he genuinely does not want to say. The things coming out of him now are not offensive words aimed at strangers. They are confessions, private ones, real ones. He blurts out that he is attracted to a female classmate. He blurts out a fear. Then, in the moment the episode has been building toward, sitting in a room with Kyle nearby, he blurts out, "I love Kyle." He claps his hand over his mouth. Kyle stares at him. Cartman's eyes go wide with something the show almost never puts on his face, which is genuine panic. Not the theatrical panic he performs when a scheme is going wrong. The real kind, the kind that comes when something you have protected your entire life is suddenly exposed in front of the one person you least want to see it. He goes to Kyle. He does not threaten him, or try to reframe what just happened, or build a cover story around it. He does something he almost never does. He asks Kyle for help. He says he cannot go on that television program now. He says Kyle has to stop the appearance from happening. If he goes on national television in his current state, with the reverse ticks firing, he will confess things in front of the entire country that he cannot afford to confess. Kyle realizes what is in front of him. Cartman is genuinely vulnerable. Cartman is genuinely asking for something. Cartman has just said, out loud and without planning to, that he loves Kyle, which after years of schemes and cruelty and deliberate harm is the single most destabilizing thing Cartman could possibly have revealed. Kyle thinks about this. He thinks about every terrible thing Cartman has done to him. He thinks about the stem cells and the chili and the 100 other calculated acts of cruelty aimed specifically at him over the years. He thinks about how rarely Cartman is ever in a position where Kyle holds the power. Kyle lets Cartman go on television. The show cuts away before the broadcast begins. It never shows what Cartman says. The episode ends before the audience finds out what confessions came out on live national television. This is a deliberate choice by Parker and Stone. The horror is in the implication, and the implication is enough. Whatever Cartman said, he said it in front of the largest possible audience, with no control over what came out. The show trusts the audience to understand that this is the worst thing that could happen to Cartman specifically, and does not need to show it. The secondary storyline also reaches its conclusion. The To Catch a Predator segment, a reference to the real television show that would lure men who were trying to meet children into a stage location and confront them on camera, ends when the men who were trapped realize they have been caught. Several of them take their own lives on screen. This happens in approximately 4 seconds of screen time. It is shown as a brief visual, and the episode moves on. The speed with which the show depicts this and discards it is itself the joke. The same casualness it is criticizing in the school shooting episode applied here to a different subject. The same normalization of something that should not be normal, treated as a punchline so brief you might miss it. The episode is about the word that does not come. Every other episode on this list involves something shown directly. The chili reveal, the impalement, the missing skull, the empty hospital room. Le Petit Tourette builds to a moment that is kept off screen. The camera turns away at the exact moment of impact, and what is left is the knowledge that it happened combined with the permanent inability to know exactly what was said. This is more disturbing than showing it. The audience's imagination fills the gap with whatever would be most damaging for Cartman specifically to say, which is something different for every person watching. Parker and Stone found a way to make the most effective version of the scene for every individual viewer without filming a single frame of it. Cartman spent 10 episodes of Season 11 being the most in-control character in the show. He faked a medical condition and used it as a weapon. He got every adult around him to work in his favor. He arranged a national television platform. He was running the situation completely. Then, his own brain betrayed him. Not through any external force. Not through Kyle exposing him, or the doctors catching on, or the television crew figuring out the scheme. His own practiced behavior turned against him and said the thing he had spent the most effort hiding, in front of the person he had spent the most effort hiding it from. Cartman can plan for other people. He can account for what Stan will do, and what Kyle will do, and what the adults around him will do. He has demonstrated this repeatedly across the show's run. The one variable he cannot fully account for is himself. the part of him that exists underneath the schemes, the part that blurts out, "I love Kyle," in a room where Kyle can hear it, the part that then runs to Kyle and asks for help instead of building a plan to handle it alone. That part came out. The fake condition created the conditions for the real one. Kyle looked at it and made his choice. Underscore, underscore, quote, underscore 9, underscore, underscore. The next episode on this list is the one that rewrote the history of every episode that came before it, where a character comes back after 9 seasons to deliver a single piece of information that makes the most celebrated moment in the show's history significantly darker than it already was, and where Cartman has to sit with the knowledge that the cruelest thing he ever did was also the cruelest thing anyone ever did to him. Section 11. The reveal that broke the show's own history. Scott Tenorman came back. 9 seasons had passed since the chili cook-off. 9 seasons of Cartman doing increasingly terrible things to increasingly large numbers of people, each scheme more elaborate and more damaging than the last. The show had built an entire mythology around what Cartman was capable of, and all of it traced back to that one afternoon in Season 5 where a 9-year-old boy fed another boy his own parents and licked the tears off his face. Scott Tenorman Must Die was the foundation. It was the episode that proved what Cartman was, everything after it existed in its shadow. Then, Scott came back and explained what had actually happened. The episode is called 201. It is Season 14, Episode 6. It aired on April 21st, 2010. It is the second part of a 2-episode story that began with 200, the show's 200th episode overall. The central plot of both episodes involves 200 celebrities who have been mocked by South Park over the years, filing a legal case against the town, demanding immunity from ever being made fun of again. Tom Cruise leads the group. The celebrities have a specific demand beyond legal protection. They want to know who Cartman's father is, because the answer to that question is connected to something they need. The father question had been running through the show since Season 1. In an early episode called Cartman's Mom is a Dirty Slut, the show built an entire cliffhanger around who had fathered Cartman. The answer was given in the following episode, and then complicated, and then left unresolved in a way that the show had been carrying for 13 seasons. The celebrities believe that the answer to this question gives them leverage. Scott Tenorman is also part of the group. He has spent the years since Season 5 doing his own research, and what he found changed everything. Scott reveals the information in front of an audience. He has waited for the right moment, and this is it. Cartman surrounded by people, no way to process the information privately, no way to control the room. Scott tells Cartman that while he was researching his own revenge against Cartman in the years following the chili cook-off, he discovered something about his father, Jack Tenorman. Jack Tenorman was a fictional Denver Broncos right tackle. He had been having an affair with Leanne Cartman. Eric Cartman is Jack Tenorman's son. Scott and Cartman are half-brothers. The man Cartman arranged to have shot on a farmer's property. The man whose body Cartman had ground into chili and served to his own son at a public event. The man whose murder Cartman celebrated as the greatest victory of his life. That man was Cartman's biological father. Scott looks at Cartman and delivers the line he has been saving for years. He says, "Those were your tears, Cartman. You were crying for your own dead father." The moment Cartman licked the tears of unfathomable sadness off Scott's face in Season 5 was not, as everyone watching believed at the time, a monster savoring his victory over a broken enemy. It was a boy tasting his own grief without knowing it. The tears were real. They were just coming from the wrong person, or the right person, depending on how you look at it. Cartman sits with this information for a few seconds. Then he points out that since his father was a Denver Broncos player, he has a connection to the Denver Broncos. He decides this is acceptable and moves forward. This response is either the funniest thing the show has ever done or the saddest, and it is genuinely difficult to tell which. On the surface, it is pure Cartman, the immediate rerouting of devastating information into something personally useful, the refusal to be broken by anything, the armor so thick that even the revelation that he murdered his own father and fed him to his half-brother cannot find a gap to enter through. That reading makes it a joke about Cartman's bottomless capacity for self-protection. But there is another reading underneath it. Cartman processes the information in approximately 3 seconds and produces the Denver Broncos' response. 3 seconds is not enough time for any human being to genuinely absorb what Scott just told him. The Denver Broncos' response is not processing. It is the sound a person makes when something is too large to process in public, when the armor has to go up immediately because the alternative is falling apart in front of everyone. The joke and the defense mechanism are the same thing. The show lets both exist at once and does not tell the audience which one to take. What the revelation does to the history of the show is more significant than what it does to Cartman in the moment. Go back to Scott Tenorman Must Die and watch it with this information. Every scene plays differently. The episode spent its first half showing Cartman losing repeatedly and being humiliated repeatedly, and the audience understood this as a smart kid being temporarily outsmarted by someone slightly smarter. Now it is something else. It is a boy trying to recover money from a family member he did not know was his family member, being defeated by a brother he did not know was his brother, and then engineering the death of a father he did not know was his father. Cartman trained a pony to attack a scarecrow, wearing his father's general shape. Cartman manipulated his friends into warning his half-brother about the pony as part of the plan. Cartman arranged for a farmer to shoot his father on private property. Cartman obtained the body and processed it. Cartman served it in a bowl at a public event. Cartman licked the resulting tears off his half-brother's face and called them yummy. None of this changes in terms of what happened. Every action Cartman took is still the action he took. But the emotional architecture of the episode collapses and rebuilds itself around the new information. The revenge was not a monster defeating an enemy. It was an orphan destroying his own family without knowing they were his family, and then celebrating the destruction. The retroactive reveal is the most disturbing thing the show has ever done to its own continuity. Not because of the content. South Park has produced more graphically upsetting content in other episodes, because of what it asks the audience to carry. Anyone who watched Scott Tenorman Must Die and found Cartman's victory satisfying, which is most people who watched it, has now been informed that what they found satisfying was a child murdering his father. The pleasure the episode produces and the horror of what the episode actually depicts are now permanently entangled in a way that cannot be separated. Parker and Stone did not plan this from the beginning. The Season 5 episode was not written with the intention of the retroactive reveal. Scott Tenorman Must Die was written as a complete story about Cartman's capacity for evil, and the Radiohead cameo and the parents in the chili and the yummy tears were the complete statement. The revelation in Season 14 came 9 years later, after the show had been running long enough to revisit its own history and find new things inside it. This is worth understanding because it changes what the reveal means. It was not a puzzle that Parker and Stone planted and waited for the right moment to solve. It was a reinterpretation, a decision made years after the original episode to reach back into the show's own past and find a layer of meaning that was not there when the episode was written, but becomes retroactively true the moment it is spoken aloud. The show can do this because of how Cartman works as a character. His history is solid enough that a revelation about it feels true rather than invented, even when it arrives 9 years late. The audience accepts the new information because Cartman is the kind of character whose backstory could contain this and remain consistent. He was already someone who could do what he did in Season 5. The fact that the victim was his father does not make him a different kind of monster. It makes the specific monster he already was more complete. The 201 episode was also the episode where South Park attempted to show the Prophet Muhammad on screen. The show had depicted Muhammad in an earlier episode called Super Best Friends in Season 5 without controversy, before the global climate around such depictions had changed significantly. In 200 and 201, the character of Muhammad appeared but was kept inside a bear costume throughout, a reference to a real incident where a Danish newspaper faced violent threats after publishing drawings of the Prophet. The show was trying to make a point about the specific intimidation being used to prevent his depiction. Comedy Central censored the episodes anyway. They blacked out Muhammad's appearance entirely and replaced Parker and Stone's dialogue in several key scenes with a long audio note explaining that the content had been removed. Parker and Stone issued a statement saying they were disappointed and that the censorship undermined the point the episodes were trying to make. The episodes as they originally aired had significant portions simply blacked out or replaced with silence. This is the episode that contains the Scott and Cartman revelation. The censorship happened to the same episode. The two things exist in the same 22 minutes of television, the most significant retroactive reveal in the show's history, and one of the most significant moments of external interference the show had ever experienced. The show had spent 15 seasons arguing that nothing should be off-limits for comedy and satire, that the willingness to treat every subject the same way was the only honest approach. The censorship of 201 was the most direct external challenge to that argument the show had faced. Comedy Central decided that one specific subject required different treatment regardless of what Parker and Stone intended. The bear costume remains. Muhammad never appears on screen in the uncensored version of the episode, because the uncensored version does not exist in a form that has ever been publicly broadcast. The only version of 201 that aired was the censored one. What does exist, uncensored and permanent, is Scott Tenorman standing in front of Cartman and delivering 9 seasons worth of weight in a single sentence. "Those were your tears, Cartman." The show had built its most celebrated moment on a foundation it did not know was there. When the foundation was finally revealed, the moment did not collapse. It deepened. The celebration became a eulogy. The victory lap became a grief that Cartman processed in 3 seconds and filed away under Denver Broncos connection and moved on from, because moving on is what Cartman does when the alternative is feeling something he cannot afford to feel in public. He has been moving on from it ever since. The show has never returned to it directly. It sits in the history of the series as the thing that cannot be undone. Not the murder, not the chili, not the tears, but the knowledge that all of it was turned inward the whole time, aimed at the person doing it as much as the person receiving it, and that the most evil kid in the world spent his greatest moment of triumph crying for his dead father without knowing that was what he was doing. __, quote _1, 0 __. The next and final episode on this list is the one that started all of this. The highest rated, the most studied, the most celebrated, the one that sits at 9.6 on IMDb and taught the show what it was capable of. But now that you have spent 10 sections inside the darkest corners of South Park, there is one last thing about Scott Tenorman Must Die that you are finally ready to see. Something that was always there in the episode, hiding in plain sight, that changes not just how you read the ending, but how you read Cartman for everything that came after it. Section 12. What the tears were always about. There is a moment near the end of Scott Tenorman Must Die that the entire episode has been building toward. Not the chili reveal, not the Radiohead appearance, not even Cartman licking Scott's face. The moment is smaller than all of those and arrives just before them. And most people who have seen the episode a dozen times have never looked at it directly because the episode does not announce it. It just happens. And then the bigger moments arrive and pull all the attention forward, and the small moment sits in the background doing its work quietly. The moment is this. When Cartman's plan comes together perfectly, when every piece lands exactly where he put it, and Scott begins to understand what is in the bowl, the camera finds Cartman's face. He is not laughing. He is not performing triumph for the crowd. He is watching Scott with an expression of complete, focused attention. And his eyes are wet. The show always told you those were Scott's tears he was tasting. That is what the episode wants you to think in the moment. That is what Cartman wants you to think. After 201, you know they were not only Scott's. Scott Tenorman Must Die aired on July 11th, 2001. It is Season 5, Episode 4. It has a 9.6 on IMDb, the highest rating of any South Park episode ever produced, and one of the highest ratings for any individual television episode on the entire platform. It is the episode Parker and Stone made to show that Cartman was the most evil kid in the world. It is the episode that changed how they wrote the show. It is the episode that Rolling Stone named as containing the second greatest moment in South Park history. It is the episode that introduced Cartman's final form. It is also, in the light of everything that came after it, an episode about a boy destroying the last remaining piece of his own family without knowing that is what he was doing. This section is not a retelling of the plot. The plot was covered in Section 1. This section is about what the episode means when you bring everything else to it. The 9 seasons of Cartman that followed, the 201 revelation, the specific way the show constructed the episode's structure, and the question that sits underneath all of it and never fully goes away. Parker and Stone said in interviews and in commentary that this episode represented a deliberate decision to make Cartman irredeemable. Before Season 5, Cartman was mean and selfish and frequently cruel, but the show had kept open the possibility that he was a child whose behavior was the product of bad parenting and limited guidance, and that somewhere underneath the cruelty, there was a person who could be different. Scott Tenorman Must Die closed that door. The writers said explicitly that after this episode, Cartman was not coming back from what he had done. He was the most evil kid in the world, and that was now permanent. What is interesting about this decision is that it was made about an episode whose full meaning the writers did not yet know. When they wrote Cartman arranging the murder of Scott's parents and grinding them into chili, they were writing the action of a monster. They knew it was dark. They debated it. They decided the only way to make it acceptable was to ensure Cartman did not pull the trigger himself. The farmer had to be the one to shoot. This kept Cartman in the category of manipulator rather than direct killer, which the writers felt was an important line to hold. They did not know, in 2001, that the man the farmer shot was Cartman's father. They found that out the same time the audience did, in 2010, when the story demanded it. And when they put it into the show, it did not feel invented. It felt true. It felt like something that had always been in the episode, waiting. This is the specific quality of the 201 revelation. It does not contradict anything in Scott Tenorman Must Die. It deepens everything without changing a single frame. Go back to the episode knowing what you know now and look at the specific way Cartman defeats Scott. He does not simply hurt him. He goes after the thing Scott loves most. Scott loves his parents. They appear in the episode briefly, warm and present, clearly a real family. Cartman identifies this love and uses it as the weapon. The chili is not just a shocking ending. It is a carefully aimed strike at the center of something real and valuable in Scott's life. Now apply that understanding to Cartman's own situation. Cartman grew up without a father. The show has run on this absence for its entire history. Leanne Cartman raising her son alone. The question of the father being a recurring mystery. Cartman's specific brand of neediness that drives almost every scheme he runs. He wants things with a hunger that goes beyond normal wanting. He wants to be recognized, to win, to be the most important person in every room. This is the psychology of a child who grew up without something fundamental and has been trying to fill the gap ever since. The man who could have provided that something was Jack Tenorman, the man Cartman had shot. This is not a connection the show makes explicitly in 201. The episode does not stop to analyze what the revelation means for Cartman's psychological history. Cartman himself does not analyze it. He routes immediately to the Denver Broncos and moves on. But the connection is there for the audience to sit with, and it is one of the darkest things the show has ever quietly placed in front of its viewers. Cartman spent his entire childhood without a father. He did not know his father was alive and reachable. His mother apparently never told him who his father was, or could not, or chose not to, for reasons the show leaves deliberately unclear. And in Season 5, operating entirely on the logic of a wounded child who had been embarrassed and robbed and humiliated, Cartman engineered the death of the father he did not know he had, and then celebrated that death as his greatest achievement. The yummy tears of unfathomable sadness, they were his. The episode that introduced Cartman as the most evil kid in the world is also, read from this angle, the episode that introduced him as the most damaged kid in the world. These two things are not in conflict. They are the same thing. The evil is the damage. The elaborate scheme, the months of planning, the willingness to murder two people to recover $16. None of this is the behavior of a stable person with a healthy relationship to the world. It is the behavior of a child who learned very early that the world would not give him what he needed, and who decided that the only available response was to take everything else instead. Parker and Stone built this into the character without necessarily knowing they were building it. The 201 revelation was not planned in Season 5, but the material was already there, because Cartman was already there. Already a character whose cruelty was inseparable from his emptiness. Already a character whose need to win every confrontation was the surface of something that ran much deeper than winning. Scott Tenorman Must Die works as a pure revenge thriller even without any of this. It is perfectly constructed on its own terms. The audience who watched it in 2001 and responded to it as a masterfully built episode of dark comedy was correct. The 9.6 rating is correct. The Rolling Stone recognition is correct. The episode earns all of it purely through the craft of its construction, the misdirection, the reveals, the way every element pays off in the same scene. But the show earned something more by running 26 seasons and returning to its own history. It earned the right to look back at the episode that defined Cartman and say, here is what was also true, not instead of what you thought, in addition to it. The episode is both things at once. It is the cleanest piece of plotting the show ever produced, and it is the portrait of a child destroying his own family in the name of revenge for $16 and a public humiliation. The specific detail of $16 is worth holding. That is the total amount Cartman lost to Scott across the episode. The original $10 for the pubic hair, plus the additional $6.12 Scott stole from him later. $16.12. This is what Cartman decided was worth the elaborate multi-month scheme that ended in 2 deaths, a public breakdown, and Scott Tenorman eating his own parents at a chili festival. Cartman himself states at various points in the episode that this is about more than the money. He says it to Stan and Kyle when they tell him to just let it go. He is right that it is about more than the money. What he cannot say, what he probably does not fully know, is what the more than part actually is. The money was the surface. Underneath the money was the humiliation. Underneath the humiliation was the rage. And underneath the rage was the specific wound of a child who had spent his whole life without something everyone around him seemed to have without even noticing they had it. Scott had parents who loved him. Cartman did not have a father. Scott used his advantage over Cartman casually, the way people use advantages when they do not think about them. He burned the $16 not because he needed the $16, but because he could. Because there was no cost to doing it. Because Cartman was below him on whatever social scale Scott was measuring. Cartman felt the full weight of that measurement. He was not wrong that Scott looked down on him. He was not wrong that the humiliation was real. What he did with those correct observations is what makes him what he is. The episode ends the same way it always ended. Cartman licks the tears. He says the line about making Scott eat his parents. He wins. He is 9 years old, and he has just committed the most elaborate act of revenge in the show's history, and he stands in the middle of it, looking satisfied. Now you know whose tears they were. Now you know who was in the chili. Now you know that the most evil kid in the world and the most damaged kid in the world are the same kid, standing in the same spot, tasting the same tears, winning a victory that was also a loss he would not understand for another 9 seasons. Scott told him the truth in 201, and Cartman said Denver Broncos and moved on. That is the most Cartman thing that has ever happened. It is also the saddest. The show started with 4 kids in a small Colorado town doing terrible things and getting away with most of them. It built 26 seasons on the question of how much darkness a comedy can carry before it stops being a comedy. The answer South Park arrived at, across hundreds of episodes and decades of television, is that the darkness and the comedy are not separate things. The darkness is where the comedy lives. The laugh and the horror come from the same place and arrive at the same time. And the show that understood this earliest and pursued it most completely is the same show that let a 9-year-old boy lick tears off another boy's face while a band called Radiohead watched. If you enjoyed this video essay, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.